Okay, thank you. Okay, I'll call the meeting to order, folks. First, I have to get to the agenda. It's 7:01. The meeting is duly constituted. A quorum is present, and the first order of business is adoption of the agenda. May I have a motion and a second? Any changes?
Mayor Burr, if I could, item 6, business arising from the minutes. Later I'll make a minor revision to the minutes, but this will be the business arising from that. It'll be discussion on capital expenditure prior years.
Okay, discuss CapEx prior years. Okay. I was going to have one matter arising from the minutes, but I can just raise that at the time, right, Peter?
Yep.
When we get to the that agenda item. Okay, thanks. So, yes. So, how do we handle that, Peter?
So under item number, second page, case 8D.
Okay, so
CSC recommendations.
2 recommendations coming forward from the Council Strategy Committee. That's an on-table item in front of you, and going forward, as I alluded to before, we will formally adopt any on-table items at this stage of the agenda. So this is part of the amendment of the agenda that we will be opining on when I call the question. And are we ready for the question? Yeah? So all in favor and opposed? That carries. And next is public participation. I need a motion to waive the usual time limits to allow the municipal grant presentations up to 5 minutes per presentation, not including questions from comments, and that there. Okay, that would be a second part once we receive it. So can I have that motion and a second? Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? That carries.
Just one note, the Lions Bay Arts Council, Uda Phillips is unable to attend due to illness, so we will just have 3 presentations tonight.
Fine, thanks. And I'm sure we don't have a problem with rescheduling that as well, so when the time comes. Okay, so we'll move on with the 3 grant presentations that we have. And the first one is Kate Pratt. Kate, you're up. Sorry.
Good evening, Mayor and Councillors. I appreciate the opportunity coming to speak to you guys this evening about the Events Committee's grant and our activities for 2018. And on behalf of the Events Committee, I would like to thank the Village Council for all of your support over the last years, especially to 2 people sitting at the table here, Pam, who always helps us with the Canada Day grant, and Nye, whose team is consistently a step ahead. Anytime I email at the last minute, he's like, yes, we've already got that in the plan. Thank you very much. So the Events Committee calendar is fairly well established at this point, and the Village looks forward to our events on all of the big calendar days, so New Year's, Easter, Canada Day, and Halloween. Over the last couple of years, we've added in a few smaller fun evenings, which we try and have be self-funding, so a bingo and games night. Last week we had our first ever trivia night, which was a huge success. We had tons of fun. It went a little bit sideways. There was some impromptu dancing. Lights went off at some point, as you do at trivia nights apparently. But so we're trying to change things up and have some new activities. From last year, we've had 2 changes. The Lions Bay's Got Talent. We've decided to run every 2 years, just to give talent some room to grow.
Change their act.
Yeah, exactly. It's not the same thing every year. And also Halloween is a very, the adult dance party takes a lot of time and effort, and it wasn't well attended this year. So we thought if we have that being every 2 years, people might be more excited to commit to buying a ticket and coming out. So that being said, the Got Talent will be this year in March, and then there's no adult Halloween dance, which will affect my grant application because we've just made this change recently. We currently have 14 volunteers on the Events Committee, which includes a couple of new members, but we will try and recruit a couple more this year. I have a feeling some of the members have been on it for a while and they may be fading. Myself, in July, I will be stepping back from the Events Committee and hopping on a plane to Barcelona for a year. we're packing up ship for a little bit. And the only reason I'm mentioning this is to ask council's assistance in finding some storage for our items. The events committee used to have storage pre-hall renovation in the disabled washroom. And I think around that same time we had a new shed put out back of the hall. So I'm not sure if we're supposed to even be in the shed, but I have taken over about a third of it at this point. And I think it leaks or something. A lot of the items in there are getting mold on them. So I have a lot of stuff which we can't keep there at my house, which my husband loves. I've got lots of boxes, all the signage, the speaker. So come this summer, we'll need to find some place to store it. So if there's any ideas, that would be great. But to run through back to the grant, the revenue and expenses for this year, with the removal of the Halloween dance, that takes off about $1,000. So we should be running a budget of around $7,500 this year, of which Canada Day, I've got an estimate in of $4,000. Canada Day is one of those things we never really know what's happening until we have somebody committing to supplying the food. So we'll be working towards that in the next little while. Last year for the big 150, we had fireworks and music in the evening, a live band down at the beach, which I've heard great things about. So if we have budget, I think it would be lovely to do that again this year. So last year we did not, as you'll see through the application, we didn't use all of the money last year from council. So with our estimate of $7,500 minus our balance from last year, less the Canada Day grant, we would be asking for $1,800 to cover our operating expenses for this year, plus all of the works and fees waived for the hall rentals and that kind of thing. So that's it, if anyone has any questions.
Thanks, Kate. Council.
Who's your number two?
Good question. You mean in terms
And
of
what
when
would the
I
good-
leave?
What would you could answer me?
Heads duck. We'll see. When Heather retired, heads ducked. No one stepped forward, and then eventually somebody emerges. But we'll see. I'll keep it posted.
Anybody else? Wouldn't you rather have 2,800 to
Sure.
put in surplus if not needed?
Well, it would give, the only thing I did think about taking 1,000 off is that it's one of those things where you have these big events, it takes up a lot of time and everyone's like, okay, we're not going to do one next year. It could very well be that come November, people are like, oh, I wish we were doing a dance, let's do something with the band.
Just to have some
It
wiggle
would
room.
give us flexibility if we wanted to throw something in towards the end of the year.
Yeah, I'm not only being kind, it's also a bit of a political question, so we have consistency. So we can just point to a very standard
Gotcha.
grant
Yeah.
year to year.
Yeah.
And then it's just a small thing, but the Canada Day, the 1,000 was just for the 150th
last year.
anniversary. I think it's going to be back down to $850.
Oh,
It's only $150 difference, but
Okay,
yeah.
I think I put 750, so I had that wrong.
Yeah, 1,000.
I think that was, I meant that
Oh,
for
I'm looking at last
Yeah,
year.
that was
I'm
the previous
sorry.
year. 2018, you got 750.
That's embarrassing.
Yeah.
Okay.
No,
No.
So actually, you have $100 more.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Okay, well, we're gonna have to charge you
Okay.
for that.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're not going to decide now. That's going to happen later. But this is Council's last chance to ask questions from the horse's mouth. Thank you, Kate.
Okay, okay, thank you very much.
Thanks for everything you do.
Thank you.
Okay, that's good stuff. That's pretty cut and dried. So we'll move on to the Arts Council is deferred. And the next one is on page starting. Louis, it's going to be you. 21.
Oh dear, that was a hard act to follow.
It was also only 4.5 minutes.
Oh, yay, good.
Yes, mine will be a lot shorter. Well, the Senior Social Circle has been an experiment for about 3 or 4 years. And we're never quite sure just what we're going to be doing because we depend very much upon various things over which we have no control. I think that there's two things that were quite successful in the past year. One is the Tai Chi program. We've had a total of 21 or 22 people registered for the spring, and I should say, winter session. But we don't know how many will register for the following parts of the year until March of 2019. So that leaves a lot of uncertainty. The other thing that done out quite well is the directory. We're very much aware of the fact that groups like the Events Committee and some of the other groups actually make money, or they contribute money towards what they do. We find that is very difficult to do, and this year I think we could claim that we managed to do a reasonably good job with the directory. That being said, we're asking for $3,100, I think it is, in cash, and that includes a guess at what we might need for the Tai Chi program, $2,000. Publicity and hospitality miscellaneous. And then what is quite nebulous is the thought that we had a little while ago about having a common room and making the community hall more of a community center, as it were. And the idea of the common room is kind of on the back burner at the moment. The idea was that if we had a common room, such as we think at the library at one time, there could be 3 or 4, maybe 2 or 3 events happening at the same time on an afternoon, on a fairly regular basis. And that would be such that whoever wanted to be involved in some common room activity, such as the sorts of things they have in the West Van Rec Center, would keep the community center live, so to speak. But we don't quite know what's going to happen with regard to the idea of a common room. I think we are fairly well aware that this very small room upstairs can be available fairly frequently, but there may be occasions when we want more. And if you want, I can give you some examples of maybe sorts of things that would attract the people. Finding a project or an activity that will catch fire is not that easy. So that means that it's nebulous. And I'm sure that people will have good questions, but no good answers. I see that my colleague and treasurer is here and can help answer some of the details that you may want to expand upon.
Very good. Thanks, Louis. Council. You look like you have a question, right? No?
I'm just curious, not being to sound judgmental on this. You've got the Tai Chi revenue on here as $47.32, and the instructor's fee was $5,700. Why don't you increase the fees to cover the cost?
We have been increasing them very slowly, but there's a question as to whether we lose out on the roundabouts what we hope to win on the swings. So we have raised it a little bit from what it was originally. We did think about doing that again, and we could perhaps do that in March. It's not necessarily set in stone for the whole year that it'll be $6. It's a very good deal at that price, and we're very fortunate in having a subsidy, as it were, from the village. I think I'm right in saying that, in fact, we generated more money in the last run around than we expected. We would hope to do so again, but again, it depends on the public participation.
Louis, if I could just add a point.
Yeah.
My wife's got involved in the whole process of Tai Chi, and she feels quite strongly that keeping the rate low ensures that people that need this service can get it, because Tai Chi is really a health-related thing. It's not just a fun thing. And we have, attracted a lot of people, and we keep trying to bring in more people, and we're even thinking about people who can't do Tai Chi and doing a program for them. So that, although we're a fairly wealthy community, nevertheless, it's quite a stretch for people to put out, $100 or $250, for 2 people, especially if it's a couple, to pay for it. So we find that by keeping the rate low, we get the maximum number of people coming in.
Actually, I just did the math, works out to about $1 a person a session.
What, the subsidy
Yeah,
of the number of sessions we did?
yeah.
Yeah, plus the hall as well. The hall's very important to us.
Well, it is.
Yeah, that's not a cash item, so that's
Yeah,
just a,
so-
that-
But in
that's an
terms of
income.
cash differential for the subsidy, it's $1.
Well, I mean,
I know that you knew the answer to that, but there is.
yeah, to my mind, it would, I would actually like to see you guys consider a price drop to potentially bring in more people, or maybe a couple's discount, so, you know, $10 for a couple.
Well, the optics might begin to look opaque. That's my concern.
Kind of
Well,
a
I
great
think-
number with 23 people there, I mean,
Well, but we don't know next, that's for the,
well, I'm picking 23.
But it's drop-in, right? So there's no season ticket. Maybe
oh
you,
yes,
No, there is.
yes.
You buy 3 months at a time.
oh, you buy 3 months at a time.
Yeah.
Okay, well, the pricing strategy we can leave up to you. You're asking for 4,100. Is that correct?
No, 3,100.
31. Was it 41 last year?
Yes.
Yeah. And so why the difference, Louis,
Why the difference?
from last year?
Well, we're doing fewer things.
Okay.
We were doing some things outside the village and
Yeah.
that sort of thing. Bringing speakers to the village to be involved in the speakers program doesn't really work because our catchment is very small. And that's why I've been spending quite a bit of time alerting people to what happens at places in West Vancouver, the rec
Yeah.
centre,
Yeah.
for example, K-Meek and that sort of thing. And that last, well, I've go to several events. They even advertised something that happened at the Brackendale Art Gallery. I think probably I was the only one that went. But I had a secondary reason for going. That was to listen to Wade Davis. I want to bring him here if I can.
Oh, that would be quite a coup. Okay, Ron?
Two things. One, because I'm doing two birds with one stone. Thank you very much for your group for doing the directory, which is, I mean, the bigger group, your thumbprint and everybody that you know was involved. So thank you for that. And I also see we have a piece of correspondence from you in the back where you gave additional information. So rather than us emailing you, I'll say thank you for that extra information.
That was not about the SSC, was it? Oh, it was about the
Yeah.
idea of a community association.
I think you're clearing up some funding too.
It could well be.
Thank you.
Thank you, Louis. And our final presentation is from Lions Bay House Concerts. I see Tamara is not here, but
Yeah.
the next best thing is.
Right. Thank you for the opportunity to speak on behalf of both
Welcome.
of us, I guess. There's a pretty detailed document that my wife submitted to the village recently. I think the initiative of what we've created is really about building a greater sense of community. I think that, while the demographics have changed over time, the people are still, they welcome the reason to get together, and I'm glad that, at least a few councillors have been lucky enough to join us for some of these nights. They're very, entertaining. The quality of the entertainment we bring in is exceptional. People bring a dish to share, and there's a lot of social activity that goes on. In terms of our numbers, we've actually hit some pretty good ones. We've had 25 concerts with over 1,000 tickets sold, and 239 attendees in 12 local homes. And we've also handed out 82 community cares tickets. So people who, like was mentioned before, that have an issue, having a capital to come out to an event, we're widening the net to make sure that people aren't left out. And what we want to do is build on this momentum to take an activity that people are gravitating towards in the community and widen what we're able to offer. So there is an artist series that we're bringing in, a visual artist, named Diana Thornycroft, who's flying in for an event. We've got the Artist in Schools program that we had a great time with an artist who came in and presented to an all ages show that, you know, people who have limited mobility getting to the school is a lot easier than getting up some of our driveways and walkways to our homes. So that's one aspect of it. We're also looking to branch out into the village hall. We have, in the past, we've used village resources in terms of chairs, and we found that that was sort of a stumbling block. We didn't have access to them, a guaranteed access to chairs, so we had to go out and buy chairs. You know, things like that we're finding a way to try and keep the momentum building and broaden the scope of who we're able to reach. So we're looking at ideally getting into the hall. That's the biggest driver for us, to try and you know, fill that void of world-class talent coming in to entertain our people, and having even more motivation to collect as a group, as a cohort, and you know, sharing in something that people seem to really enjoy and get a lot of energy from. So we have, my wife and I have put a fair amount of capital into some of the equipment, but what we're finding is that like some of the items within the budget, I can answer questions on that, but if you look at the we're hoping to purchase a sound system that has a much smaller footprint. We've been lucky enough to borrow one a few times that is basically allows us to squeeze in about 4 to 6 people more than you typically, because of PA. The one that we have has to come out further from the walls, and you know, big stands, and the smaller thing actually has a smaller footprint than this pedestal, and you can hear it all over the home. So we're hoping to branch out so that we can squeeze more people comfortably into the homes that are gracious enough to open their doors to us, as well as you know, when we get into the lighting, we have the lights that we have are more for outdoor events, and we're trying to get, like, you know, have the event be lit properly without being too overheating or overpowering the artists. And then we've got the hall rental. We'd like to get into, you know, getting into the hall and like I said, broadening the circle of people, as well as the community concerts in the school. Those are only about half an hour. Generally, half an hour to 45 minutes, where the artists will come in and do an all-ages show for the kids, as well as seniors and anyone else who can attend in an afternoon and pop into Lions Day School. But we're just trying to expand out a bit from there. So, is there any questions I can try to answer?
Council?
Couple for me, if you don't mind, thank you. And you know your numbers better than I do, so I'm flipping back and forth. I think just these are numbers that either are in here or you've mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
I thought I heard it, you're projecting 17 home events this year?
That sounds right. I think it's in the...
Let's call it that for
Yes,
argument.
it's 17,
Yeah, it says-
yeah.
And a total of 25 events, or was that a prior year number?
That's what we've done to date.
Okay, so
in the last 2.5 years, we've done 25,
okay,
and now we're like, I think we have 4 in February actually.
okay, and allowing for different sizes of people's homes.
Sorry?
Allowing for different sizes of people's
Yeah,
homes,
right.
but using your personal experiences, I'm sure being at all the events.
Mhm.
How many people typically attend these things?
Typically somewhere between 40 and 60. So.
Well, let's call it 50 then. Let's split the number then, just for the sake of argument.
And
Typically, if I thought I saw something, you charge $35 a ticket or something like
yes,
that? Per person, per couple,
per person.
Okay. And of the more or less 50 people who kind of notionally agreed to come to these different events, I know the locations are geographically somewhat separated throughout the year.
Yep.
So people find out about it through electronic and word of mouth media. What would you say of the 50 odd people that come are repeat customers?
Well, I actually have numbers in the earlier thing. Like if you look at the 1,043 attendees, that number refers to tickets, I believe, and then 239. I believe those are unique, or where is it now? There's a unique number here somewhere. I apologize, this isn't my...
Well, it's okay. No, we're just kind of a little granular.
There was a point in here that said unique attendees.
Well, I think when
I believe it's 239.
So,
Yep,
page 11,
okay, yep,
so that's the
sure. This one?
although I should show you their application.
Yeah, no, I know. That's, yeah, the 239 is the
Okay.
number that I mentioned a couple of times.
Yeah.
But, yeah. And then,
So,
sorry, 293 unique attendees and a 665 person e-list. That's,
sorry, one more time?
if you look at the bottom of that
Yeah.
page, in the number of members, it says 293 unique attendees.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. So those are the people, and then the larger number of attendees are ticket sales.
That's from all over, not only Lions Bayers.
Correct. And, yeah. I believe. I can't say with 100% certainty, but I mean, tomorrow's back in the middle of February if you want to talk to her further about it.
Ron, where are you going with that? Are you
Well, I'm trying to okay, so
narrowing in on...
well, I'm trying to narrow this down to okay, so 50 people come per event that you're projecting, and so my question of that would be, how many of those would you guess have been to other ones, or are they all first time, never been to them before?
It's pretty dynamic. What we find is as we move from one person's home to another, their social circle informs who comes.
Yep.
Sometimes the performers are really, they get people excited. We've found that the audience responds more to jazz for some reason.
Okay.
So, that's kind of dynamic. And then who's into jazz, you'll get repeat people. Sometimes, people will be traveling so they can't make all the shows, or there's a certain core group of people, but I wouldn't say they're always the same. I mean, you can't have 293 people in the same home all
Okay.
the time. So it's pretty dynamic, and then I think it's growing beyond that. And our goal has always been that. Like we've always sought to, Louis' senior social circle and that sort of thing have been quite gracious in terms of spreading the word. When people host, they broaden the people that we reach.
Okay.
Ideally, we'd like everyone in the village to be able to attend, whether it's a free event at this community school or one of the larger events at the village hall where it's more mobile access friendly. So it's it's one of those things where we're just trying to find a way to make
Okie
it work.
doke, so thank you. So off your, I guess this would, since I got here, the almost last page, which is your profit and loss statement,
Right.
it shows that for the first year under review, you've lost a little bit of dough,
Yep.
and it's a fairly more dramatic number, the 2018.
Right.
So, which is less than what you're asking, so there's still a big shortfall in this.
Right.
Where's that gonna come from?
Well, ideally, we'll have sponsorship again. We don't have a guarantee on that.
Okay.
But that would be some help, and then, whatever we don't have the wherewithal to manage, it would be, we'd have to make do, I guess.
Okay, thanks.
Although I wouldn't call that a profit and loss. It's a capital
It's a pro
spending.
forma,
There's a cash flow. That's capital mixed in with expenditure. Who owns these backdrop and stand, stage, sound equipment, chairs? Who will end up owning those?
Well, it's the organization of it. Like my wife and I we're basically Lions Bay House Concerts.
Yeah. And so, of the number that you're asking for from Lions Bay, what would you see that being? I mean, it's spread proportionally over all your expenses, right? But what would you see it? How would you justify its expenditure? For example, the whole rental permit at SoCan Insurance. That's an in-kind contribution from Lions Bay. There's no cash.
Okay.
It's just waiving of the fee.
Well,
but in terms of hard cold cash, what would Lions Bay be investing in?
Allowing us to continue to build an effective social tool to engage people. Like I think, the standard of entertainment that we get here tends to be, on a certain level that people are having a hard time bringing people out to concerts if you're keeping in that bracket. And what we're doing is we're building momentum to bring in talent that gets people excited to come out, and the dynamic of that is it's not like there hasn't been a ton of effort and expense put into creating it. And
I'm not so much. I mean, I understand
Yeah.
the value, but the social value.
Sure.
What will the money be spent on? Of these things that we see here.
Yeah, well, that's you can see, like, I primarily work on the sound equipment and stuff like that, so I know, like, that tends to be what I tend to talk about. But performer fees, most of the money goes to the artists. That's the nuts and bolts of it. You can't bring people in that get people out of their homes. Like, as the village has become more, affluent, I guess would be the word for it, but, discerning, I guess, would be a better word. It's a funny thing, like, we tried, collecting more money for tickets, and there is a real drop-off, where it's not just, is it $5 or $6 for that. There's that aspect of it. But it's also, these are artists. We've really struck this interesting balance of talent who's emerging, like from other festivals or other sort of. My wife puts just a ridiculous amount of time into researching the people that we bring in, and so you've got to hit them before they become big, right? But at the same time, people are kind of gambling. Like, no one really knows what the artist is going to be like. So you've got to find this kind of balance point of how are you going to attract discerning community members and get them excited to come out to an event, and be able to cover the cost of the band to bring in someone of a caliber that's going to entertain everyone.
Yeah.
And also, hit them before they get so big that you can't afford to bring them in. So there's a lot of research that goes into creating that network of artists.
Well, I mean, that seems to be what you have talent at. So, I mean, I think, speaking as a member of council, what sort of assurances are we looking at that ensure that this is freely available to all Lions Bayers, admittedly with a fee associated, to a participation fee that's not insubstantial, $35 or whatever the number is. I ask because I look at Tamara's business card and it says request to be on our private invitation list. That's not something that I like to see in a public environment.
Well, you have to understand that people are really resistant to hand you their information, and I'm sure, Louis, you ran into that, getting the community.
So that's private as in confidential, not.
That's,
okay. But,
yeah.
Okay.
But I mean, in terms of who we service, it's like I said, we've done everything we can to make as many people aware of what we're doing as possible, and also price it at a way that people can get to it and give out free tickets. So if you're asking, like, how do we broaden the scope? Going into the village hall, going more events into the school's been great in terms of partnering, but someone still has to pay the band, and someone's still bringing, other aspects to be able to hold it there, the artists and, whatnot. But those events broaden the who can come.
Sure.
You know, going into the village hall with an act that is gonna bring people out and get them excited, that's, you know, another way to broaden out everything. It has not been an exclusive thing. What we've tried to strike a balance with is having it be, number one, appealing and worth coming to. And secondly, allowing people to own it. You know, people bringing a dish to share has been a really critical aspect of it, because they're investing in it. They're investing their time, and it's a very delicate balance, but this will allow us to do exactly what you're asking about. Because if we kind of, you know, without this funding, we can't make that next thing to broaden it to more school shows, more community hall events, more other aspects of it. So that's kind of what we're trying to do to get people in the village what they're responding to.
Okay, that's good enough for me. Thanks, Norm.
Well, I was just curious if what sort of local advertising you do.
Well, we personally walked around the village and handed out a bunch of rack cards. We had them printed. We had them in mailboxes, but not all of them arrived. I don't know why, but I guess some people have filters on what comes into it. But we get, you know, that's a bit of a thing. But we printed rack cards, photocopied event materials. There's Facebook promotion, so, you know, if you're on Facebook and you might get an ad that pops up, we may have paid for it to appear, or it may not. It may just be organic through your network of friends who someone that you know liked it. So we're trying to do everything we can to get it out there to people. That's you know, postage and the Facebook ads and the printing and just email blasts as well.
So, well, I guess what I'm getting is we promote certain events on the website.
Yeah.
Would we,
That's a good
or
question.
do we promote
Yeah.
house concerts on the website?
We have some policies that pertain to what we can and cannot promote through the village update. And house concerts is kind of a little bit gray area. We had a discussion about it in the fall. At the moment, most of their events have been promoted through mention in the senior social circle section of the village update. So they've been promoted that way. One of the things I was wondering was, I see here $5,000 for a website. Do you guys have a website or no?
No, we just have, what do you call it, an Eventbrite page. So this is the ticketing page. So we'd want to sort of expand that out. So that people can have a better idea of who's coming and how it works and that kind of thing.
I think if we're going to fund it with grant money, we should promote it.
Well,
Yeah.
Absolutely. It'd be a change in the way we do things.
If they're grant recipients, they
They
would
do get to
be,
advertise.
they would be in the village update
Okay.
And that's
regardless.
a very primary driver, the access to the hall and the access to being promoted through channels. We've been trying to find a way, and Louis promoting it through the seniors thing was almost a workaround, a happy way to get around the sort of brick wall we hit in terms of trying to promote it through the village.
Yeah, this hasn't been a funded thing. My concern is, I've been to one concert, and I would say a third of the people were Lions Bears. The rest were from elsewhere: West Van, North Van, Vancouver. I didn't take a poll, but I recognized a third of the people, and I would recognize them. So, you know, I'm very interested in sponsoring Lions Bears participation in anything.
Right.
The more the merrier. Not so much people from West Van.
Right.
Is there any consideration of a differential fee structure that would compensate for that? So, because Lions Bears are somewhat subsidized by their tax dollars.
Right.
Is that something you could consider?
We can explore ways to get it to the people. I think.
Yeah, we're looking to make it more palatable to the community.
Yeah, absolutely. Were you at the Lila Bialy show? Or
No, I was at the Kerry Marin one,
Morin, right.
which was, you're right, spectacular.
Right. The more we can do to engage the villagers, the better.
Okay, that's probably a good enough answer, I think, actually. Okay, I think that probably, sorry, Fred.
Just one question.
Sure.
I'm just wondering, if you go into the hall, would the format of the evening be the same as a house concert, or is it dramatically different?
I'm sure it would be a different experience, but we try and find a way to have it capture as much of the spirit as we can, but also broadening it out. There is something about being in a home environment that I think having both feed each other. To the mayor's point, like trying to get it appeal and be consumable by a broader audience, as well as when people have access to tickets, stuff like that, we can kind of do that. But I think that to your question about would it be different, it would definitely have a different feel, but we try and have it be as much of a community as possible. And there's some interesting things that just we're experimenting on the mix, right? To make it as enjoyable as possible. So, we'll welcome input on that side of it, but it would, in terms of the format, like would it be potluck? I don't know at this time, but my wife unfortunately is unable to be here. I have a better idea of how it's going to manifest itself. I carry the wires and the sound gear and stuff.
Well, you're carrying the rest of it quite well.
Thank you.
Okay. Everybody good on questions? Okay, thanks. We'll move on.
Excellent. Thank you so much for your time.
Well, thank you for taking the trouble. Okay, so that's it as far as presentations go for now. But we'll be revisiting this in a minute. So right now I'll take a motion for receipt of the report 2018 municipal grant applications for information purposes.
This one's dropped.
They're under 1,000.
Okay.
Yeah, we're only seeing presentations from people over 1,000 asked. So I'm looking for a motion, any kind of motion, and a second. Any further discussion? This is for receipt for information purposes. All in favour? Opposed? That carried. There are no public delegations, so we'll move on to review and approval of the minutes of prior meetings, starting with the meeting of council on January 9th. That is on page 93. Can I have a motion to approve these minutes? Thanks, and a second. A few questions, Peter, just to kick it off. I would suggest that under 5A, the second bullet point, a better word is change rather than strike. It's a nicety.
Sure.
And the 5A, second bullet point, change the word strike to change. Under 7B, the IRRs. No, scratch that. I will have something come up in business arising. That's that. And under 15, where are the terms of reference that we say we're reporting on? They should be in these meeting minutes or other meeting minutes?
Yeah, well, they have to be published. They should be with this meeting.
They should be in these minutes, right?
But hang on. Published.
Because they're not published anywhere else.
Well, we don't publish the terms of reference in the minutes, but that should really just simply say that terms of reference were approved by council and will be posted to the website or whatever. They're not part of the minutes. The minutes would reflect the fact that those terms of reference were approved.
Well, it says here, it does say...
I know, so it should be changed to what I'm suggesting as opposed to...
But we publish the terms of reference of other committees in the minutes.
In the minutes?
Yeah, in which they're approved.
Well, it's more in the agenda that we publish most of them.
Well, agenda and all minutes, yeah, but I mean, at some point, so the infrastructure committee's terms of reference came up in an agenda and hence appeared in the minutes of that meeting. I don't want people to have to go and seek and find where the heck are the terms of reference for this memorial committee. I'd like them to appear in the minutes. As in,
Well,
are you
if
searchable?
they want to look for them, they're not going to look for them in the minutes. They're going to look for them on the website with all the other
Yeah, fair point.
committee terms of reference.
Okay, so I mean, if you're happy with that not appearing, I'm fine. It's yeah.
Next topic.
Oh, it was okay.
It's a long night. Come on.
Okay, so that's it for that.
I have a change, and this is on page 96 of 204, the 2018 preliminary budget, and it would be to add a second and third sentence in front of this, and it would be Councillor McLaughlin requested prior year capital expenditure allocations and expenditures be revealed, period. CFO Rook expressed difficulties with this, and we'll chat more about that in the business arising.
Okay.
Where exactly was this to be?
The one is already here, but I don't know if I'm comfortable. Had difficulties with it.
That's under 8 staff reports 8A2, right, Ron?
Yep.
Maybe we could tweak the wording a little bit. And
Sean, you got it? Could you recap it?
If I can read your writing.
Councillor McLaughlin.
Councilor McLaughlin, and there's some lines here, requested prior
Year CapEx and allocations be revealed.
And MX something.
Maybe you read it again, Ron.
Yeah, you might have to read that
Okay.
for me.
Peter?
Sorry.
Thank you. Councillor McLaughlin requested prior year CapEx allocations and expenditures be revealed, period. CFO Rook expressed difficulties with this.
You asked for that a report.
Well, yes, that was a request, and it kind of got watered down after that.
rather than express difficulties, I think maybe something along the lines of expressed concern with respect to the what to say it, with respect to the
I was thinking in terms of difficulties
the
of going
methodology.
backwards.
Yeah, maybe difficulties with the ability to go back as far as requested. Because you were requesting back to 2010.
Yes, and which
Well,
will-
actually, I think it should really
And-
say concern with the ability to go back in time with respect to those things, but also with respect to the nature of the
Yeah.
request and
I'm
the purpose.
The
happy to
purpose of
have
the
you
request.
guys flesh it out.
Right?
Yeah, the existence of the information was yeah, fine. Okay, so I think we all understand the spirit of that one. So
Yeah,
you can
let's
do
go
it.
with the spirit for now.
Okay. Anything else? So there's a motion on the table. Seconded. All in favour and opposed? That carries. So that was that, and then approval of the minutes of the the special meeting of council held last Tuesday, because we love holding meetings on Tuesdays. This was a short one. Can I have a motion to approve these minutes and a second? Any discussion? All in favour of approval and opposed? That carries.
Is it Thursday?
Yeah, you have to open it before you close it.
Okay.
Sorry, I was looking at this.
Business arising. Ron, yours was a late ad, so I'm going to go first, and that
Maybe
is
on Thursday. It was a close case, sorry, forget it.
Okay.
arising from the correspondence on residential wood smoke and Metro Van. I just wanted to be absolutely certain that it was acknowledged that Lions Bay is in the urban containment area boundary.
Sorry, where are we now?
Correspondence of the first meeting, page 98. So this is business arising from those minutes. Because what was published in the mayor's update was slightly not correct, because those were the rules for communities out of the urban containment boundary. So I just want to be sure.
I'm not sure that I agree with that assessment.
It is, because I took it straight out of the electoral area A piece, which is specifically said it was for communities outside the... There's slight tweaks in notification, in standards and so on and so forth. So I want that to be pointed out. When we produce this that goes with the tax bill, it needs to point out the differences. I've already had 2 correspondences on it, people reading it said, hang on a sec, are we in the containment boundary or aren't we? Because they read in my piece, we are not. But we are.
Okay, I'll see clarity.
Yeah, there are differences between in and out of the of the urban containment roundup.
I don't know that the minutes need to change though.
No, this is Business Horizon.
Oh, sorry. Step ahead of me.
Yeah, no, we're on item X. Okay, so that's, I just want to make sure that happens, so can that be, at least, it needs to be minuted that I made that request, so that we don't lose it. Ron?
Thank you, Mayor Pro. So mine was discussion of CapEx in prior years and reporting of it. And I'd like to just hold this for a 5-minute, because I have informally chatted with the CAO and CFO, and I'll let them both speak, but my objective would be to basically see a list of projects in a particular year that we put on as a CapEx project and that we taxed for in the bigger picture, and that we either rebudgeted it or
Killed
or something happened to it. So if something happened to it, then it went to reserves. Let's just call it what it is. It went to reserves. So I think that a big part of my thinking was, quite candidly, my first term of office, where our diligence didn't extend to anything like this. But I sit here, I'm thinking of the CapEx and what we're rebudgeting now. You know, the clarity of our projects for the past 12 months are pretty good. The 24 months are waning, 36 are long gone. 48 are really the dark side of the moon for me, and that's just this term. So as CFO Rook has mentioned, she's been with us for 3 years and I'm not going to take the words out of her mouth, but during her tenure she could identify this pretty clearly. Going backwards, she didn't have confidence that she could do that. So I guess it's a learning for me. I could accept from during the period under her watch and going forward. And ultimately the aim here is that council and staff are theoretically a continuum, but elections, resignations, turnover create an influx. And I think this is part of a standing record for future administrations and electeds to see what exactly we did deem as important to go on the CapEx list and what we did with it.
Okay, so would you like to make a motion to produce, to have... this would be, that was previously on IRR, so it was not a motion, so we're not reopening debate, so this, right, Peter?
No, it wasn't an IRR.
How did it come
Never
up?
went on the IRRs.
It didn't come on your
It was just a request?
it was at a council meeting of request.
Yeah, so we're not reopening debate on a motion, so that's fine, so you can make a new motion.
Well, so it came up as a request. We discussed it briefly and suggested that it might not be an easy thing to do or a good idea, and quick go around the table was, okay, let's just leave it alone. So there was no motion on it, so from that sense I think we're fine. But with respect to the substance of the request, before proposing a motion, I think it might be an idea to have some feedback from staff with respect to the idea itself and how we do things now, and whether or not we're already covering off the information that is being requested. I mean, if we're going to spend a bunch of time creating something that tracks this, let's not do that if we already have the means to do that already. I mean, are there systems and methodologies that we employ right now that already allow us to look at what was rebudgeted, what wasn't, and if it wasn't, where did it go? Maybe I'll let Pam speak to that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, you can see that I have a report in this package as well, where I have started tracking the rebudgets. I think it's something this council does. It shows a good due diligence. Not all municipalities do it, where we track how we spend against capital. At the end of the year, we make a decision if we're going to rebudget it, or if we don't rebudget it, and then it just goes to surplus. So I've done that for the last couple of years. I wouldn't have done it in 2015, I realized, because I started in February of 2015, so the budget was mostly done when I started, but for 16, 17, and now 18, But again, in a way, it's almost a rolling report. Like once, if we don't rebudget it, it goes to surplus, and that's actually to council's advantage because the money is no longer restricted. I mean, we may have the revenue, but then it's available unrestricted for use.
Okay, well, I don't want to reopen that because this sounds very, because I immediately was
No, no.
going to say, yes, but that's not what we're asking for.
No, no,
And
but
then we're going to have last
yeah,
week's
and that's what I was
debate,
going to finish. I mean, that's if there's another purpose for it, then
Okay, well, I think council's been copied in on correspondence between me, Peter, and Ron on this topic.
Not that I'm aware of.
Yeah, I think council was copied,
which I think
or were they
council
not?
was.
No, I don't believe Councillor Bain or Councillor Barmeyer are aware of what we're talking about.
Okay, so the report that Ron asked for, I did it and sent it to, because I wanted to know the answer, so I did it myself using the material that Pam produces. But what I'm interested in is a year-to-year progression of how this money gets spent or doesn't get spent, and either gets killed or gets rebudgeted. Very useful, interesting report to do exactly what Ron looks for, is to keep track year to year to year to year of a continuum. The information exists, and quite frankly, it was very simple. The only thing that I would want to augment your request with, Ron, is essentially starting with the starting reserve balance at the start of the period. Let's say that period is 2015 when Pam started, so we've got some good well-kept
She said
records.
she can't, because she was
16.
16, okay, 16. So there's a reserve balance at the same time. So either we spent it, deferred it, or put it into reserves. And so it's sort of a reserve reconciliation, if nothing else. But you also do.
I do the reserve reconciliation, but the surplus is the whole bottom line. So capital is only a part of that. I mean, if we're $50 favorable in budget in salaries, and that flows into surplus.
I know, and that's
So
another
you're
thing that
just-
this council
so
wants
we
to know
can-
is, do we over budget? It's not only capex, it's do we over budget expenditure. Why? Because over budgeting is
But
bad.
you do see that. I do a fourth quarter review, and
Yeah,
then
I
we
know.
review that, and then you see.
Well, we're not going to redebate this because this is not a journal entry debate. This is a political
It's
debate.
nothing to do with journal entries. I present a fourth quarter review, and I analyze all the variances. So we have a record of that. We would never reconcile to reserves, because reserves have TCA going in it, and I do a reserve reconciliation for the year end. Again, I guess I'm struggling with what the purpose is, though, in terms of,
Peter, do you remember?
like the
What I
message
enunciated?
that you want to give to residents, because I feel we do very good reporting in terms of how the money was spent, what we didn't spend, why we didn't spend it.
Do you have that note there? Where you asked me,
So
what the
I
heck do you want
think-
this
I
for?
think at the end of the day, your ultimate comment.
This conversation's happening on this half of the table.
Yeah.
It's not happening over here because we're not privy to the things you've talked about. So
That's
I'm
fair.
feeling a little sidelined here,
Yeah, I don't.
and I don't appreciate
Why did you make
it.
a motion, Ron?
So my motion would be that from Pam's period of employment from 2016 to the current, of which this is the current one right here on page 129. Which is the capital expenditures that we've approved in our budget and that were not spent, and it shows a rebudget. So basically, the money was allocated, taxed, but not spent, and now we're gonna respend it doing this. So on a year-over-year basis, that's what I would like to see for, well, I guess 2018 can be put in, so it'd be 16, 17. So I'm looking for something that looks like this.
So to do something like that, to make it meaningful, one would also have to add line items for every single one as to why it was rebudgeted or why it wasn't rebudgeted.
But that's done now.
Why
The
it
notes
was
are there.
moved to, pardon me?
The notes are there.
Just for what we rebudgeted, not for things that weren't rebudgeted.
Okay, well then the note is not rebudgeted, killed. So
Because circumstances do change and
Sure.
things become moot
Yeah,
and whatnot.
we understand that. Because
but-
if it wasn't the case, we'd have a zero reserve balance, and yet we have a fairly substantial reserve balance. That's all the over budgetings from the last 30 years. All flowed.
So, to close on this one for my colleagues, as we should get right to the.
Okay,
to
so
the
you've
vote
made the
here.
motion.
So, my last pre-pitch, and I'll give Pam and Peter a chance, is for me, and also in the continuum of future council members too, I think it's important as a financial tool to see what we wanted to do, taxed for, did or didn't do, and what we did with the money. And I can see substantially the 2018, which is 2017, is on one page.
Yeah.
So short of some explanatory notes to go with it, and we've got continuum of personnel. I'm not stuck on this being done in the next 8 hours. I think if this was done over the next couple of months, that would be fine. Staff can say when. So my motion is that I request that this come forward, if I can have a second.
Well, because this has not been debated before, it's a valid motion. I'll ask for a second, and if I don't get one, I'll second it. Okay, thanks. So, I mean, I would say, there's now been a discussion, that was Councillor Bain, it's the same report that you produced, just amalgamated into multi-years.
Well, I don't do it for, I just do it for capital, so the distinction between what Councillor McLaughlin's asked
And
for and you
operating?
have asked for.
I think operating is you take the surplus number every year and say this flows straight to reserves, or the deficit comes out of reserves. So we've had surpluses the last 3 years, so that's, from a political standpoint, that's an over budget, or unneeded.
So it wouldn't be actually an over budget, it would be an appropriate budget, but due to circumstances that occurred during the year, such as operator A being
Moved
injured,
on,
and so 6 months of his salary was paid for by WCB, so therefore we have a excess funds. I mean, that's the kind of
Heavy
work-
snowfall.
You know,
yeah.
there's a variety of different things,
Sure.
but you have to analyze all of that to come up with meaningful. So it's just so that you know, there's some work involved. It's not just well, just grab this piece of paper, that piece of paper, put it all together. There's your report.
I
It's
think we all
not-
appreciate
not
that,
that
and I think
simple,
what
so-
council is looking for is an explanation of how the money got spent.
I guess I'm struggling with it. That is, you've described the fourth quarter review I do every year. I
Cool, then
take
it's
the
easy.
budget against the actual and I explain major variances.
Yeah,
So is that not?
So,
yeah. This is year to year to year. It's a rolling document
So you just
rather
so if
than
you
an
have a
annual
fourth
or
quarter
report.
review of 2016, fourth quarter review of 2017, fourth quarter review of 2018.
Yeah, I think so.
You'd have what you're looking for. I don't know. Is that?
The fourth quarter.
yeah,
Was the final report?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
okay.
I mean, we can pick a meaningful threshold too. I mean, a couple of grand's neither here nor there.
Well, I think the ones that Pam reports on today is probably the threshold. That's good enough.
But you already have those.
Not year to year, not
Fourth quarter, yeah.
carried forward. I'm less concerned about the operating than I am about the capex.
Well, and you're right, I mean, picking on poor old Public Works, I mean, they've probably been under budget for the last couple of years for a variety of reasons.
Well, I can see sort of what you're asking for. So like with the SCADA capital, we taxed for it. AECom's now going to do it as part of the clean water wastewater, so we're not rebudgeting that.
Okay, so that needs to be explained why that's flowing into reserves. So
But-
that was a huge amount of tax,
But
33.
it will be, and it's fortuitous that we got the grant and that it'll be included in that.
No, we didn't know at the time we budgeted it that we would get a grant.
Mm-hmm.
This is, make no mistake, this is council reporting to the taxpayer, taking the glory or the blame for whatever glory or blame there is, not much, but for openness. Because I can assure you that the taxpayer doesn't look at the fourth quarter budget variance report. They need a centralized document that's easy to understand. It's a seconded motion. As I think I've said to you guys, I thought I copied you in. But maybe just to avoid overwhelming
It's
you
getting a
with
little warm.
detail. Yeah, I started I did the capex one for the 3 years in question. It took me 15 minutes because the material's all there. It's pretty
So
easy.
I think as the notional portfolio with the finance, I think this is a good tool as much for the future as it is for our piece right now. And my recommendation is on it, and I'd be happy to go to vote. And I'll live with the consequences. I'm not looking for it immediately. It can be done.
We want to get a sense of what we're asking Pam and Peter to commit to in terms of.
So I was just going to do that.
time and
Do you want a motion on this, or would this be an IRR?
No point in having an IRR when we've discussed it to this extent right now.
Yeah. Okay, so
We're
it's
looking
a
for
resolution.
We're looking for
Well,
a report.
it's not a resolution yet. You
Yeah,
haven't
no, but
voted
I mean,
on
we're
it.
asking for a resolution. So, I mean, do you want to speak to that in terms of putting? I mean, you saw the template.
Yeah. I wouldn't be doing it like the template. I mean, I think your template is different from what you're asking for.
Is it? Right?
Yeah.
You've seen it? No, but these guys haven't seen it.
Well, how about we do this? How about we table this for the minute? Pam and I'll work it out for the next meeting.
Okay, do you want to defer the question?
I'm fine with that.
Okay.
And then we'll regroup on this one in a really concise kind of fashion.
Fine, okay,
So
so
the lads
I think
are-
that's good. So we don't need a motion on that one. You guys work together, come up with something that you're happy with, that's going to do the job. So we'll table the motion. Do we need a motion to table the motion?
Yeah, you should.
Can I have a motion to table it? Thanks. I'm sure that's a very, can we get on with this kind of motion?
Sorry, can I get a proper word for word resolution on what was actually being tabled?
So we have an item that was put on the agenda at the very beginning of the meeting called, under business arising from the minutes, discussion on capital expenditure prior years. So just put motion to table, carry, well.
Well, we haven't done it yet.
voted
So,
at,
well,
yeah,
we need a
so-
second on that motion, thanks. And any discussion on the motion to table? All in favour? Opposed? Opposed? Nobody's going to oppose it. That carries. So that motion's tabled. And with that, we'll move on. Thank you for your forbearance, guys. We're trying to save you by not.
Well,
you know.
I think that it's incumbent on us to share the information with those councillors so that they know what we're talking about.
Yeah, that's also very good.
I'd
Like to contribute something, but I just don't know what we're talking about.
Okay, Pam, I think I saw you saying, hang on a sec, the regular meeting of council, the special meeting of council was not on a Tuesday, it was on a Thursday.
I thought it was Thursday, January 20th.
I believe it was. So we approved those minutes with the wrong date. That's correct, right? The special meeting was on Thursday? This past Thursday?
It's like a blur.
Yeah. There's been a lot of
Sorry,
meetings.
I wasn't sure enough to be more vocal.
No, I think
It was,
I
a,
was
it
like,
was a special one that
seems like
we
100 years ago.
That
It was
we
when you
reported
came in
out.
for. Remember
Peter
you came
posted
running
it on
in.
Wednesday, we did it on
Real estate
Thursday.
agent.
8:30.
Okay, so we need a motion
Remember the time,
to
just-
Thursday.
rescind approval of those minutes. Thanks, and a second. Second.
Rescind because.
Rescinding because we got the date, we approved the
Oh.
wrong date. So we're going to fix it right now. Okay, thanks. So there's a motion on the table. All in favour, opposed, that carries.
Sorry, what minutes are we rescinding?
Special meeting of council.
Yeah, the date was correct, the date
5B?
was wrong.
5B.
The date was wrong. So I'll take care of the business. I'll
That's
move
Thursday.
that we.
Oh, that's why I was confused.
That's
8:30.
why, yeah.
Okay, sorry, the 18th is correct, it was just the day that was wrong. That's why I was hesitating, because I was
Okay.
like trying to,
Okay, so a very quick fix. Motion to reconsider approval, and no, what did we just move? Rescind approval. So now approve the minutes as amended by amending Tuesday to Thursday.
And 7 to 8:30.
It should be, started at
Oh, that's
8:30.
right.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
it started at 8:30.
Could forget that. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right.
I mean, this must match the public notice.
Which it does.
No, which it now does.
That's right.
Okay, so as amended, approval of these minutes and a second on that one. All in. You can't second and move.
I think
Not try. You think I'm not watching?
Exercise I'm getting in here.
not exercising your brain.
Who's seconding this guy? Thank you. And any further discussion? All in favour? Opposed? That carries. Okay, that's a good catch, Pam. Thanks.
Sorry, I should have.
Okay, so we're now moving back to the regular agenda, and that is item number 7, unfinished business. It doesn't have any description, but it has a number 32. But we'll leave it at that.
Yeah.
Moving on to staff reports, that council approve the 2018 municipal grants. Do we not normally do this in closed?
Nope.
So that's usually, last time it was the subsequent meeting.
Oh, last time was
Yeah.
to give us a chance to think about it.
We generally do it at a CSC, I was going to say a cow, at a CSC, and then a recommendation is
That's
made
how it
to
works,
council.
okay.
So because it was fresh in council's mind, I wasn't sure if they just wanted to do some discussion now, but there are the 3 options. We can approve as presented, amend, or defer. And then since this meeting, of course, the Arts Council wasn't able to present. So, I mean, they had a fairly concise application. I wasn't sure if council needed the presentation or
Very
had
concise and a
questions
very
or-
high number. In fact, the highest.
No?
No,
No?
No,
no.
the reverse, they're down.
Actually quite a bit lower. But there was just one thing in that
Oh,
grant.
yeah.
Normally,
I'm looking at the wrong number.
they talked about the municipal banners, which normally they ask for money and pay for themselves. So
Yeah.
one of the reasons it's lower is they had suggested that the municipality, the village pay for those
Yeah, I
banners.
saw that. Okay, so the proposition is that we approve this now. The numbers are on page 107.
Or discuss and amend, or discuss and defer decision.
Can we defer? That'll work budget-wise?
Mhm.
Okay. So, I'll take... the recommendations have been made by Pam. They are options 1, 2, and 3 on page 105. If anybody wants to move any of those,
Or we could discuss, sorry.
I need a motion before, in theory, we need to know what we're discussing.
I'm a 2.
Okay, so Ron will move number 2. That's the obvious one, I think, so I'll second that, or I'll ask for a second, I guess. I know that's a second. So let's discuss and amend, thanks. All in favour? Opposed, that carries. Okay, discuss.
Why don't I kick off? Page 107 of 204 is also the same as page
Yes, I
6
put it
Yeah,
of
into
that's-
204,
yeah.
but page 6 is where all my notes are. So to minimize the discussion, I think the from 5 through 10, I am fine with as they are. I am fine with the formal ask of the Lions Bay Events Committee. I think Mayor Burr stole the 2,800 out of my mouth. I think we should give them flexibility. So they would stand as written on the master graph. Quite frankly, the Arts Council is pretty old hand at this, and the request is less. While they can come forward, I'm fine with their 4,000 or 5,000. Well, I guess it's 4 and
4 and in
4
kind,
and
yeah.
4. The senior circle, kudos to them as well, and I'm fine with that. My thrust would be on the Lions Bay House concert. And my thinking on that is that I really do applaud what they're trying to do. I really applaud what they're trying to do. But it's a high cost venue because of their format. There's no food and beverage and the margin that goes with that to offset any of what are really quite large costs. They're not a not-for-profit. I do want to encourage them. I'm fine with the in-kind, but for me, the 7,800 is a pretty steep number for a somewhat unproven venture that's buying a lot of CapEx that's pretty specific. So my thinking here is that I want to support them, but probably in the, I got 3 sets of numbers, somewhere between $2,500 and 4,000, and I think
For the cash contribution.
cash contribution.
But
And
the
I can-
1,300 can stand?
The
As far
1,300
as you-
can stand, and I guess really from the representative here, I was trying to get, and actually, Mayor, you shed some light on this, that perhaps 2/3 of the attenders are non-villagers, which kind of might go in with if you have somebody that is hosting at Brunswick, for example, versus the councillor on Ocean View. They're two different, there's a neighborhood, there's his or their social group of friends, and I'm sure that if you knew you were going to host a venue, you'd put it out to your own group and in conjunction with
Wherever they
this.
come from.
So it's not unlikely that well over 50% of any given room is not going to be a resident. I mean, that's just the way it is, and because there's no operational success in terms of the ticket price isn't going to cover the cost of this. So again, that's the food and beverage aspect of this, because I think it's bring your own, bring your own. So the representative also didn't really cover the massive shortfall very well to me, and it's I'm somewhat fine because they're still, I mean, if we saw them on day one, it'd be just red ink everywhere. So I applaud them getting this far, so I think that's where I'm going with. I want to help them, but I can't go the whole way. And any variety of numbers that I use, of people that go and how much I'd sponsor, I can be swayed all over the place, but at the end of the day, I have to feel good that this isn't an event that everybody in the village goes to.
Okay, thanks. Let's see if we can nail down that number after some discussion, further discussion. Fred, you want to take a crack?
Yeah, I don't dispute the points Councillor McLaughlin brings up. Nonetheless, I still feel strong support for it because I think it's really very good for the community, and I'm reluctant to discourage them with giving them a lower offer. So I'm happy with the 7,800, but if the rest of the council wants to lower it, I wouldn't stand in the way of that.
And you're fine with the rest of them, as Ron
the
said?
rest of them? Oh, I thought we were just speaking to the one. I had no issues with any of them as such, and none of the speakers were able to change my mind. Not that they were trying to. The only one that kind of waved a little flag to me was the Sea to Sky Invasive Species Council. It's just the optics kind of bugged me on it. They're asking 1,500, yet I see out of our portion, they recognize that 750 of that goes to the head's salary. And I think, you know, I know it all goes into a pot and everything, but just the way they did their books and everything, it just, you know, maybe just another one that doesn't like to pay for the overhead. You want to put the money into the ground and everything and see something out of it. But I'm not going to let that stand in the way. I think $1,500 to a good cause is fine. I just wish they'd do their accounting a little different.
Well, I had exactly the same question about that last year, so I can maybe speak to just that specific thing before I let them go. Yeah, I agree, but I think they do such good work, although we are talking about a $7,800
Supplemental
project now, arising from their saying, hey, you know, you guys have got, what is the species?
There is a wide variety. I think there's 3 or 4 that are key. 2 of them are the Japanese knotweed and the giant hogweed.
Yeah, so
but there are additional invasives that they've identified.
and it's not inconceivable we would have found that out ourselves, given that we have people going around looking. But they take care of it for us. So for $1,500, I'm happy to pay, you know, their salary over there. So that's my take on that particular one. I'll speak to the rest later. No.
There's really 2 that I'm struggling with, and the senior social circle is one I wish there was a better way, or I wish we had other avenues to support the senior social circle, whether it's with a venue that can be dedicated to that. So that's not specific to the ask, but that's where my feeling lies. I wish we could do more to support the seniors circle. So I have no problem with that request. The house concerts, I think that says a lot about Lions Bay and the kind of place it is, the size of the community, that it can attract that kind of an event. So the fact that these things are happening in Lions Bay is actually, it's a really good sign. To me, that's a sign of lifeblood. It's a sign that people are coming and showing interest in the village. They're making their way out here. So I strongly support this. I don't know if the number makes sense. I mean, we don't have a lot of experience with, these kind of asks for a community event like this. But I think it's a good thing. So I would support taking a bit of a gamble there and supporting them with their number, with their ask.
Have you been to one?
I have.
Okay.
Not in Lions Bay. I've been to the house concerts, and it's a nice feel.
Okay.
I've yet to make time to do that here, but I want to.
Okay.
Okay, well, I mean, not saying anything that I don't feel as well. As far as Ron's, I'm fine with from Trailblazers down, and I'm fine with Senior Social Circle up, echoing Norm's sentiment that I wish there was more we could do for the Senior Social Circle, but cash is cash. My problem is with the house concert, they're asking for a number that's the biggest single grant ever made, their first time out, when you include the in-kind. And I think that's a bit rich, given that it's an unproven model. I didn't get a great satisfaction on who owns the capex that we would be contributing to proportionally. I also note that 2/3 of the ticket sales are included in the P&L. 1/3 presumably is a... No, I think it's a commission. I think it's a management fee.
We didn't ask that question.
We didn't ask that. The number quoted is 14,280. That's 2/3 of ticket sales. Where's the other? What happens to the other 1/3 of ticket sales?
Let's talk about this community rewards for people that are bummed out.
Well, then that's not revenue. So
No, well, I don't think they count it as revenue.
I probably should have asked that question. I saw that there and I thought other people knew. Do you know? Do you know?
I thought the same thing. I was going to ask it, and I didn't want to interrupt, and I was sure you were going to ask it, and then I forgot to ask it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think we're all in the same boat. Be that all as it may, this number 7,800 cash is a bit rich for a first time out. So I very much support the sentiment. I think it's vital. I think they need to prove themselves. There will be somewhat of a justified outcry if these Johnny-come-latelys take $10,000 of community money.
I was thinking on this too. I mean, their financial model is, everybody thinks that, you know, electeds invest in and then it just goes to sideways. So, I mean, even at this, I'd be reluctant, quite candidly, to do it as a big lump sum. I know Pam would like to do that for a variety of reasons, but even at that, well,
Sorry, I would like to do what?
well, can we cut one check to everybody on one day?
Oh, I see what you mean.
I mean, from a fiduciary capacity, there's a question about their longevity here.
But I think we have one of the conditions of the grant is that it's returned if it's not needed pro rata to the number of months.
Perhaps you haven't had any dealings with people that are...
Yeah, that spend all the money.
No, and
So,
you-
I mean, I could see it
for-
on a quarterly basis or something like that.
We'd have to budget the full amount in tax for it, though.
Yeah,
because I
yeah,
have to.
Yeah, no,
But
we
How it gets
release-
paid out.
There-
Yeah.
Release.
It would be hard to say if they didn't use it, you'd have to spend something because they have other sources of income. Like we can do that with, like what the other groups tend to do, both the seniors and the events committee. One of the reasons why their ask was lower was they didn't spend all the money, so they're just gonna use it this year and ask for less, but they don't have that model, so it would
No,
be hard
no,
to
that would
say
be
to them if you
negative.
didn't spend it.
Well, their model mixes up capital and all kinds of things. So, okay,
What
so
about tying it to monies must be put toward performer fees as opposed to CapEx? You know, then we don't have to worry about we're contributing to private ownership of
goods.
capital
PAA.
goods.
Yeah, I mean,
Which
where
we
the money
can't
goes,
do.
it's still money, and they can say, yeah, we put it towards performance fees.
Well, if we booked
But-
somebody that's an up-and-comer for 6 months from now, but they last 3 months.
Sure. Okay, that's good. I think we
Anyways,
can put that
even,
condition.
even if it's, yeah, I mean, it's all going
I mean,
same
well,
roughly.
It's in the same
place,
pot, yeah, same bank account.
But from our perspective,
Yeah.
no, we're contributing to performer fees and not to somebody's capital.
And can we put some sort of condition on it that ticket sales to Lions Bayers are at a different price?
I
It might be
think that
difficult to
that's-
administer.
Yeah, I think that's something that we just simply see what they can come up with in terms of addressing that issue that was raised.
Yeah. What numbers did you have there, Ron?
I was going 2,500 to 4.
Well, if we went to the top end of the range 4, we would make that a $5,300 grant.
Which would be very large compared to...
Still the
others. All right, well, going to Nord's support of this, and you've attended as well too, I could go with 4 and...
Yeah, but I've also gone to the Bob Dylan concert, you know. I'd like a grant for that, please.
You know, money is one part of it. I mean, value is another
Yeah.
thing we can add. We do have resources we can offer them. You know, we touched on it briefly, the ability to promote this on the website. That might be of a pretty big value to them.
Well, but Norm, it's a finite number of events, and it's a finite number of bums in the chair per house.
Okay.
I mean, that's your number right there.
I don't think they struggle to get people. I think I think
It's
the issue is getting Lions Bayers.
Well, and also their model is not based on F&B, which is every other model says, you want a hot doggy and a beer, it's going to just cost you $20.
I like that, though.
Well,
And that was it was a community event. Some people are looking down their noses a little askance saying, are you a Lions Bayer or a West Vanner?
But the advertising is very big for them, as you can see
Yeah,
from their
yeah.
grant.
Oh, I
that,
think that's fine.
That's,
It
it's a
was-
huge
that
value
could
to them
be
to
a
be able
good
to
start.
Peter
advertise
said
in
if
the
they get a
village
grant, they're on
update,
the
which they've
email.
acknowledged.
So, you know, joining the club is worth something in this case.
Yeah.
So, what was your low number?
2,500, but 25 to 4.
So, if it was 25, let me just do the math, that would make a $3,800 grant, not the highest.
No. So, okay, I'll bite with the pioneering thing. I'll go my higher number.
That would make it the highest single grant.
Well, it's...
That's a very courageous decision, councillor.
Sorry,
But that's not true. There's higher asks in prior years.
Before
yeah.
you
Well,
before you say it's the highest amount, I wanted to make a comment with respect to the Arts
Yeah, I had to
Council
come back to that too.
request.
Yeah.
And the only reason it's dropped is because they want us to pay for the banners, whereas in the past, they've undertaken that whole.
Yeah.
So that's adding
$1,000.
operational, it's not just the money, it's the time spent
Mm.
and lining it all up and, you know.
Well, so we
running
need
it
to
all
put that
through.
in here putatively
So-
if they don't. So
So
it's
I-
1,000
I-
cash and how much in
I think
kind?
from our perspective, we'd rather give them the 1,000 cash.
We
for
don't
them
even
to
know if it's
do it.
1,000. I mean,
Oh, I
that's
don't
one of
know.
the questions I have to ask Ud is how much
Mm.
would the banners cost? They would do everything, but then they would just send us the
It was a
invoice.
TBD.
It was a bit, they were concerned about the perception that they asked for a higher grant, which I found an odd reason. I mean, we could, if you did want Uda to come in, we could speak to that, but if we do accept the 4,000, then the point is we have to add more to our budget to pay for the banners.
I don't think it's an efficient use of staff resources to be project managing their poster printing.
And if we get the art for the banners and it's the wrong size or it requires cropping, and if I decide to crop it one way and it's
Although I
Not a
do
good
believe the
idea.
ask was literally they do everything, they order it, and then when the invoice comes in, they
Ah.
pass it on to us to pay.
okay.
That literally was our only involvement, but that being said, the overall cost would still,
But we still don't know what that number is.
and then we'd have to budget it. So
But we
would
could
give them
approve it
four,
up to a
but then
certain
I-
amount and no more.
Well, it
Or I
depends on
could-
if you're gonna have her attend to speak to it.
Or I
not.
could just email her and ask her how much the banners were.
Yeah.
Would
So
be-
are we, any debate that we're having would exclude the Arts Council's consideration? Because I think there's too many open questions there.
You might wanna leave it open and knock that, resolve that one next meeting.
Fine.
Once we
Okay.
have the answers.
So back to the big
Number.
the number. I don't support a high number. I would like to see that number in total, including the in-kind, although I recognize in-kind is not cash. I would suggest that 5,000 total is generous as a first-time recipient. It does get them in the community club, so they get free reign of all. They can put sandwich boards out. They can do all the community stuff that they want, just like any of these other community groups.
And it would be a lot of public works time to set up the concerts and to take them down and.
That 1,300 may even be a little conservative. Yeah.
Yeah, mhm.
Okay, but let's value the in-kind at 1,300.
No, I did put some effort in. I did quite a few
Yeah.
hours for each of the concerts and,
So
Okay, so you were-
to
you
make
were
a
at-
5,000 total is 35.
Okay, you're at
3,800.
3,700, so you weren't far off the
37.
4.
Yeah, that's true. 37. Am I seeing nods on 37?
I'm agreeing with your number that you're correct.
Your math.
That's all.
Right, Norm, you're gonna have to sell.
Well, I'm selling the idea of support. Like I said, the number's hard for me to substantiate. They picked a number, but I do like the idea of supporting them. I do like the idea of offering them a place to advertise. If we're not going to be able to offer them all the cash they're asking
I'll just
for.
point it out to you that because you weren't part of this debate earlier, there will be people out there who will say this is a business and
Of course.
has no part of support from the community. So we're treading a line here,
I
as it
agree,
is.
I understand.
And I think to that on my piece, I'd like to baby step that line.
I typically don't do this, but I wouldn't mind hearing any comments from the gallery.
I'd love to make one.
Please.
When I came here, there were two things that I also, that I'd read through it all, that I had some concerns with, and it seems it's the same two you had. The first was the invasive species, because I looked at the numbers to how much money, what the budget was, and how much money would appear to go to the people who were running the program. So out of a $300,000 budget, it looked like $200,000 was going to whoever was administering, but that, maybe I was wrong on that. When I looked through the one for the concerts, and I wasn't aware that it actually included a lot of people other than from Lions Bay, because I have to be honest with you, I haven't gone to any of the concerts, although I've heard them. And that's not criticism, by the way. But I did notice a couple things in here. I mean, a lot of this is capital expenditures to create a company that can generate revenue based on having the equipment necessary to do that, lights, speakers. And one item I noted here in particular is Lions Bay's the house concert anniversary sampler. Now, I'm not sure exactly what that is, but when I look at legal fees, which usually means we have to, get some, whatever, so that exclusively belongs to somebody, mixing, pressing, digital, that's creating a product of some sort, whether that's pressing, I would have related to a record, but I suspect it's more something other than that.
Oh, it's a CD these days, I think, but yeah.
CD,
Yeah.
recording and visual design. Now, the purpose of doing that is not to make it so that everybody in the Lions Bay can have their in-house copy, so they don't actually have to do it, so that that can be sold commercially.
Become a record label.
Sure, if it's sold commercially, that's to generate revenue that flows back to whoever that sells the product. It doesn't flow back to the community of Lions Bay. So what we are getting, it's just my opinion, is we're getting a third of a return on whatever they're doing, because we have a third of the people attending being from Lions Bay, and you're putting up a whole lot of money towards capital investment, which everything does, and I would assume if we get even more people out to the hall, there'd be, but all I'm saying is, you have no guarantee of any kind of a return at all, other than knowing that you did something to help somebody out. I would think if you want to give them the money, why don't you actually take possession of some of those things? Why don't you own the speaker system? Why don't you own the record rights? Whatever, you put the money up, you get the return. If that thing doesn't pan out and they go away, with all the equipment that you funded, but that's $7,500 or whatever number you agree to this year, you can assure you have the same request next year and the year and every year forthgoing. That at the day that dissolves, the equipment goes with it. You get nothing back. You're just basically, it's an outright grant to do whatever they want with. And I think, as the mayor said, this is not, please, I don't mean to do a disservice to these people, because I'm sure they love the community and everything, but it's a commercial venture. It's not a not-for-profit. It is to make a profit venture.
Okay, good. Thanks, Doug. Louis, please, yeah, go ahead.
I like the idea of considering the value of what Tamara and Michael are doing for the village. It's kind of a slippery path, making a judgment between what is a business and what is a social service. And this came up with our discussions at Senior Social Circle, for example, when we were doing some of us, a very small number of us, were doing the directory. And initially we came up with an idea that one cost for advertising would fit everybody. I soon came around to the position where I felt that one cost did not suit everybody. And so we arrived at a very slippery position where we would make a judgment as to which advertisements would qualify highly on a scale as a social service. And I was thinking of the taxi service. There were several. There was the taxi service, there's the music together group, there was the house concerts, and for all of these organizations, I had to ask myself, well, how much money are they making in the village? And it seemed to me that the village was getting more in terms of a social service than they were ever getting in terms of a profit for their operation. The other thing that came to mind too is that it did occur to me that I can go to K-Meet and to West Bend Library, to events that are held there, for the same price that people in West Bend pay. And if we could be, this is what I was thinking, if we could become a community hub in the House Sound area, then we should think of encouraging that idea, so that all of the settlements between Squamish and Horseshoe Bay would feel that this is a social hub. And they would come to some events, some would come, and some people will come from West Vancouver. And they, in fact, would be subsidizing something which we in the village would not otherwise have.
Yeah.
So this is my line of thinking. And so I think that the House Concert Series could go far. And if eventually you institute a business license, tax comes to the village.
Yeah. Susan?
Just a quick one, is that all they had was 1,300 in kind?
That's the value I put on it. They didn't put a value
Oh, they
on it,
didn't
so
put it
they
on.
wanted to rent the hall 4 times and tables and chairs. They have their own chairs now, so it was really just Public Works time and rentals for the 4
Because
events.
what they normally do is you bring your potluck, you bring your own bottle of wine. Well, you can't do that in a
Well,
public
I noticed they
place.
did have liquor license costs. When they had the
Yeah,
hall
they would
rental,
have to.
it actually wasn't in kind. I think it's the
Yeah.
additional
There's
costs
a
they
liquor
feel they have.
license, you gotta have somebody serve it right.
I think that's what those
The price
costs
of
were
the hall goes
for.
up to 220 every time, a day, every time if you're serving liquor. So-
Which we would still waive that, but it would be
Yeah, I know,
additional
but
in
still-
kind,
Yeah,
yeah.
so I may
Yeah.
have
Yeah, I don't know
underestimated
whether
the
they
in kind.
followed all
Okay.
the permits.
Yeah.
Okay, so are you saying the 1,300 might be light?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
I forgot about with the alcohol, but I know they have properly
That's
budgeted
what they
for
normally
the liquor
do.
license
They
that they
normally
have
bring
to
their own
obtain.
alcohol, which is fine.
Yeah, this is, you don't open up to the floor usually, because then you get all kinds of new ideas.
Which is
Deirdre,
great.
would you like to add anything?
Well, Fred and I we were invited to go with the Christmas one, and we very much enjoyed it. We reconnected with people that we hadn't seen in the village. They maybe moved out of the village, and we reconnected with them. We very much enjoyed the event, and I think we should support them. And I've talked many times with Tamara before, and it sounds like, they end up putting a lot of their own personal money into it in order to have it keep going. I mean, I think their intention really is to promote a community spirit in Lions Bay. So,
Yeah, I would tend to agree with that, and I did notice that record label thing, because if that flies, that's the tail that wags the dog, or it's the rest of it is the tail that wags the dog. That's the dog, and they could be selling $250,000 worth of CDs. It's not CDs anymore, Doug, by the way. It's now Spotify online. But be that all as it may, selling stuff. But we don't have to fund them every year. And if the business turns profitable, okay, so we had a partner doing that. So
You could also put in a rider like what we did with the directory grant last year was, if it's not needed at the end of the day because it's turned to profit, then it's
return
it, or we could, instead of a soft return it could be a hard, you must return it.
judging by this P&L, I don't think business will ever be seen to be returning a profit.
We don't know about that revenue.
No.
That
Yeah,
looks
there's
They
like.
didn't have
zero
any
for-
sponsorship revenue,
Yeah.
so.
And there was,
and
although
I
the
respect
sponsorship
it.
was low. It was only $7,100 last
Yeah.
year.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so.
I would
But-
like to put in a plug for Lions Bay Community Association.
No, too late. Sorry. Yeah. It doesn't work like that. Okay, so let's settle on a number.
Oh, just before we move on to it, in the issue of the municipal hall ones, or the Broughton Hall one, if they're having, he sort of didn't indicate for sure that they're gonna do the potluck thing or not in that one. But I was thinking, even if they did, if it's a potluck, everybody's bringing their own, do you still need to have food safe?
No, as long as it's by invitation only, which it would be, because you've got to get a ticket. Or you do when you're in the house concerts anyway, I imagine it would be the same thing. So
Yeah.
to me, that would be invitation only, so if it's invitation only, you're okay with.
But invitations are available to everybody. We've
Yeah,
established that.
Yeah, but it's still
But-
invitation only.
As
It's
opposed to
not-
just saying it's an open house anywhere.
It's not
and
public, yeah,
open
yeah.
to all,
Just walk
then
in
you
the
do
door.
need the license for
Yeah, yeah.
food.
Okay, so good point. I think
On
we
the
can
tail
handle
of
that.
that one then, would you need a liquor license if it's a BYOB deal?
You can't do BYOB.
Oh, you can't?
No,
Oh, okay.
Well, there's your revenue, Ron.
you're not allowed to.
Okay, so I think we're looking to seed this. I agree with Norm's sentiment. This is the kind of thing that, in balance, is probably good for Lions Bay rather than bad for Lions Bay. We have some political considerations. First-time applicants. We don't want to be seen to be favouring. I don't need to repeat myself. I'll move that we. You keep track of the in-kind contributions month to month, right?
No, it's really
It's just a number. It's a putative number. Nominal. It's
Yeah, and it's a net zero to the village.
Yeah.
What we do is we record the revenue and the expense. We only started doing it a couple of years ago, and it was just really more for Public Works to put a value on the fact that, Public Works does a lot of time for this. The hall, if it was empty anyway, it's not a big deal, but it's the Public Works time. that they put in.
They probably have to set up a stage every time. and
Yeah,
stuff,
so it's quite a bit of work. Like the smaller events, like the seniors actually do a lot of their own setup. Or if it's a small, a few chairs, they'll put them away. But
Don't
for
be
a house
getting any
concert,
ideas there.
yeah.
It's a very small group,
Yeah.
very, very old.
I mean, we still help sometimes.
Okay, so I would go for
But-
this then. Let's say a cash grant of $3,700, which, if the $1,300 number is correct, would make a $5,000 total, with the provisos that there's a return of the cash portion if the business shows a profit, which I don't see how that would happen, but if it did, and you would have to nail them on the difference between cash flow, P&L, and capex, but you would, kind of.
So the in-kind time is also accounting lessons.
Yeah. And that the cash of the grant is nominally given to performance fee only. But the suggestion was that we use it to buy the capex items and we take title to those. No, I don't think so.
I would, yeah.
Yeah, we wouldn't
I
want.
believe the public work manager agrees with me on
Yeah.
that one.
More storage, more upkeep.
Yeah.
Suddenly
Okay,
a
so with that,
P3
so
mention.
I will move that as discussed for the house concerts and as discussed for all the others, granting them as requested, except that the Arts Council must come and see us, we'll nail down their numbers.
The Arts Council was
That-
gonna
Or
pay for
we're
the
just going
banners,
to up.
yeah.
We were going to up their budget, the cash component, by $1,000.
No, I think just for the amount, the value of the, we'll just ask them to put the
Whatever
banners
that
back in their
costs.
request.
Or whatever that is.
Okay.
Remember.
Then
But so we
come
don't
back
know
to
what that is
council.
today.
No,
So we
come
can't
back.
we can't approve the Arts Council one today.
No.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
But the direction could be that because then Yuta would not have to come and do a presentation. I would just ask her what the amount of the banners were, and I could let council know at the next meeting at which time we could.
Fine. We've sort of seen it. I do know that she missed last year's presentation as well.
She did, but she came back. Like we had
Yes.
them over 2 meetings last time because a couple of people couldn't make it at the
Yeah,
last.
that's true. Okay. So does everybody know what I've moved sufficiently? You got it more or less, Shauna? Good enough, close enough, and you can listen to the recording later. Would anybody care to second that one?
Well,
Okay, so there's seconds. Any further discussion? All in favour? And opposed?
None opposed.
You good? You, everybody's good? Okay, so that carries. Okay. Good. That's the first piece of our budget that was spent this year. And now we move to the next piece of our budget, I think. Is that right?
Yes, this is the utility budget. So this is council's second time seeing these budgets. I've just made some minor tweaking. The insurance numbers, the final insurance numbers came in. There were a couple of additional water connections and 1 additional sewer connection that we were able to budget for, so that was a bit of additional revenue. But they're just minor changes. The only few comments I wanted to make, staff is still recommending 0% for solid waste because it is what it is. The rates support that. 0% for sewer, although again we have a small deficit. We're going to have a surplus this year, so it will offset. I was just wondering if council wanted to reconsider the 0% for water, just and open it up for discussion, particularly given that we have a very large water project that's untendered, so the amount's unknown. We are projecting a surplus in water, but and just maybe the message of 0% gives that we have enough money. But I would argue with water, there's a lot of unknowns. I realize even a 2 or 3% rate increase wouldn't give us a lot of money, but it still gives us some to offset any unexpected costs.
How much does 2% give?
Um,
On the water?
It gives 2 times 83.76.
Yeah. Yeah.
About 16,700 with a
that's-
2%.
That's not insignificant.
So, I mean, that's up to council. That was when I looked at it again, and just given the fact that this big project, which we know the public is very supportive of. So, I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
the money's going to a good cause. It's going to this water project and then if for some reason we didn't need it, we know there's future water projects, and the money would just go into the water surplus. It would be isolated to water.
The projected surplus is 121 before that number.
Yes,
That's a pretty substantial surplus anyway.
it is.
Yeah. Okay, so I'll just open it up for discussion. I won't ask for a motion. The recommendation here is just to receive for information purposes. Why not do readings?
It would actually be, it is just for information, but it's also to guide staff, because at the next meeting I will be coming with the bylaws.
With the
Just-
bylaws,
yeah,
yeah.
with
Oh,
first,
because
second,
the
and
readings
third
are on the
reading,
bylaws.
yeah.
There's no bylaw attached.
So it would be
Yeah.
staff's direction for the rates.
So we've looked at this once before. So I think really the only really particularly new thing is, would we see our way clear to putting in some sort of nominal, because we don't need it, but nominal increase in water? How much have we increased water lately?
It's been coming down. My first year here it was 16%, and then it dropped to 8%, and last year I believe it was 5%.
And that was, that's net of the effect of changing from parcel tax regime to a
Yes,
utility fee
yeah.
regime.
Yes.
So that was all a wash.
It was, exactly.
Moving
yeah.
it from
Yeah.
parcel tax to
Because the
fee.
parcel tax would have gone up the same amount, we treated it as the same revenue,
Yes, okay.
which is why we got rid of it.
So we have done some fairly substantial numbers before. There is investment coming in water, significant. Although drainage and roads, that's the Mid-Bayview project, is not water, but we are talking about a water pipe. Plus, I mean, we're talking about a $2.71 million project that we don't even know that's what the number is anymore, do we?
For the water tanks?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Plus the
it's-
supplemental projects.
It's entirely market driven.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. We may not get what we think we're going to get for 2.71, because that's what's funded at this stage. Anybody care to?
0 for me.
So that would be 0 for solid waste.
All
or-
three
All
utilities,
three,
yeah.
yeah.
Like I said, it was just an opportunity for council to discuss
That has
it
a
one
nice
more
ring
time,
to it, I have
and-
to say.
Well, I mean, for the majority, it's, I mean, 2 points is 16 grand, I mean, okay, 16 grand.
And if we need money, for example, if the bids come in way, given inflation in the infrastructure construction market these days, because there's $60 billion floating around in it, we've got money we can borrow from ourselves.
Yeah. So I think, to me, I'm also looking at what we've done during our period too. We've had some pretty meaningful increases for a variety of things, and we're showing a surplus here. I kind of like it at 0 across the board. I mean, the other two are cookie cutter.
Yeah. Okay, so we'll take that as a motion. Anybody care to second that one? Thanks, Fred. Any further discussion on that? Yeah, Fred?
This is more of a administrative thing. Is there any way of tracking changes on these things, like we do with some of
Yes,
our doc apps?
yes.
It would make it easier to find out where you.
Yes, I can do that.
From one version to the
In
next?
fact,
Yeah.
it was just the insurance, my reading glasses. There were minor insurance adjustments of an extra $223 in sewer, $942 in water. And that was actually all for water and sewer. The additional revenue, which I did outline down below, that we had additional service connections. I had done it based on last year's service connections, so we had additional 2 water connections, so that increased the revenue. I believe I have the amount in the description under the water. Sorry. Too much paper. Oh, I didn't quantify it, sorry.
Oh, I see.
So,
You got footnote number 1.
but no, I apologize, I didn't quantify it. And then 1 additional sewer connection. And that was and then in solid waste, when I actually calculated the rates, there was a difference of about $83 increase in revenue. So
Sewer
very, very
connection is
minor.
not paid for by the recipient?
Yes, so I based it under the number of sewer connections we have, and we had an additional sewer connection between 2017 and 2018. Someone's a vacant lot, they built a house, so we have an additional.
yeah, so there's a $600 admin fee for the connection, plus the actual cost of the installation of that service.
Yeah, actually, it wasn't the connection I added, because that would have been this year. It's just, this year we're now billing them for sewer.
Okay, so it's a revenue item, not a
It's
cost.
yeah, it's a revenue,
okay,
sorry.
got it.
So
On
that's,
sewer,
sorry, when I said connection, so I apologize, it's revenue. We have 2 new water connections, so that's additional revenue. And we have 1 more sewer connection, that's additional revenue.
okay.
Because they're charged per
Is that sewer connection, that being the one in the cul-de-sac, does that involve a pump?
That's not the sewer connection, they're
Oh,
not
that-
connected yet.
Oh, so that's kind of,
You're talking about the property at the foot of Tidewater?
yeah,
Yeah, that will be a grinder pump to the sewer main.
yeah, okay.
Yeah.
$5,000 video inspection. Is our new camera not suitable for the video inspections?
No, so the camera that we have is a push camera. It's a video camera system designed for small diameter pipe, 4-inch.
We were told when we approved that we would never need to use a video inspection service again.
I don't know where you got that from, but
I think your lips.
And I
no.
believe the pipe camera was prior to our current
yeah,
public works manager being hired.
it was already approved when I was hired and purchased. When I was hired. A push camera is good for laterals, so the connection from the property line to the sewer main in the street, which is our responsibility. But the actual video inspection of a main, the push camera is not good enough.
You need a crawler.
You need a crawler. You can't push that distance of
No, I know. I used to
line.
work for a company called Sewerview. I
Yeah.
think you know of it. In Burnaby.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, got it. Okay, so there's a second motion on the table for a PAT budget, meaning no increases beyond what we see here. And this represents 0 in all three
Yes.
sectors.
Yes.
Nothing to do with an election year or anything, of course. So, second motion, call the question. Receive for information, which is pretty much your marching orders, correct? All in favour? Opposed? That carries.
So at the next meeting, February 6th, we'll bring the bylaws, out of 3 bylaws for first, second, and third reading.
Very good. Okay, now the biggie. Not that it's a biggie, because we've seen much of it before. So tell us what's changed, Pam.
Okay, so again, the reason I gave this to council, not necessarily go through page by page, but I thought if you did have any questions, but the main emphasis will obviously be on the supplementals.
Yeah.
So
So
the
let's move straight
changes-
to that, I
Yeah,
think.
so I just, at a high level, I locked, the insurance numbers are now firm, so a few $1,000s there. I've added in some of the revenue we discussed. And the big one is, which I've already mentioned, the additional public works vehicle is now in here as well.
The lease thereof.
The lease thereof, yes, for half a year. The current leases expire June 30th, so we'll be renewing them.
But that's
July
just
1st.
luck, isn't it? I mean, if we needed to lease a vehicle tomorrow,
Yes,
we could do
exactly,
that.
Yeah, so we've decided actually, because of that, we would just wait until we renew the leases, so there'll be a couple of months.
Yeah, so your
where,
anniversary is all
yeah,
good and everything.
yeah.
Yeah, good. Yeah, okay.
So that RFP will actually be going out probably
February.
in February. When I was getting my quote, it was actually apropos because we were thinking of getting it out in May, and they said actually if we get the RFP out in February, we get better pricing. Because the longer they have to try and get the vehicles, the better pricing we can get. So it was actually fortuitous because we get better.
Same kind of, well, I'll leave the details to you.
Yes.
Can handle a plow.
Yeah, they will. Yeah.
It's a requirement.
Plow, dump boxes, fully equipped. Yeah.
So if we go to page,
127.
thank you, 127. That is the list of the supplementals. So I've just built on what we were working on in the last meeting. I've added the community signage. So I just showed the 13,460 being rebudgeted, but I know the number we were talking about was 15, so I can adjust that and then just we can budget for the difference.
Yeah, so I mean,
And-
just to point out, we approved $25,000 or 25.5.
25.
Yeah, budget last year for parking signage, which came in substantially under expectation. We also out of that paid for what now? There was about a $4,800 item for
the widening of this section of Bayview Road
Bayview. Yeah.
to free up the pedestrian walkway to and from the school.
Can I just ask? That's not the subject of this encroachment agreement.
No.
That's unrelated. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the Lions Bay Beach Park, I had received some emails looking at some expenditures this year of $50,000, and then I'll offset the rebudget of $29,000 against that, so there's an addition of $20,000. What else? The Public Works, I do have the attachment of the details. There were a few items removed. Basically, there were some larger ticket items that we would wait until the relocation of the Public Works before we would purchase those.
Did you ever find out what a
So-
spool gun is?
No, negative. But you will have that in the description.
You ain't getting the spool gun until you tell us what it is.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and on that note, the larger ticket items, we will be bringing sort of a business case forward, but this was just to sort of lay out what the numbers would look like. So that number's been adjusted. For the office renovation, we did actually have a contractor come in, take measurements, so we're going to get a really good quote. It just hasn't come in yet, so unfortunately that's still to be determined. We had someone come in to quote on new windows for the village office and council chambers. There's 15 windows in total. That replacement of the windows was, I guess, originally part of the community hall renovation, but they were pulled. So
the $1 million
these are,
renovation, you mean, or some other one?
Moving on, the windows are about 30 years old and they're single paned. So the quote for that just came back today, and it was $12,000. So it's actually a bit lower than I thought for 15 windows fully installed,
That's not
double
terrible.
glazed. And I think that's the only changes. There was one other item that Mayor Burr had mentioned about bringing forward the hiring for the Public Works person. We had it at May 1st, so I discussed it with the Public Works manager, and we feel even if we were to post this week, which we can do, probably the earliest we would get someone on board was April 1st. We'd like to post it for at least 3 weeks. We need a couple of weeks for interviews. Generally, anyone you make an offer to needs to give 2 weeks' notice, so that puts it to the end of March. So if we do that, if we bring it forward, it would be add another $6,500 to the budget.
Well, we're going to
But-
approve that decision coming up in the recommendations, the resolutions coming forward from the Council Strategy Committee meeting. So, I mean, it's, unless you tell me different, I would suggest that the quicker we can get this person on, the better, right? So it's not a budget issue; it's a practical issue.
Yeah, it's timing issue as well. I mean, it takes time to interview and
Yeah, we know.
select candidates.
Yeah.
So I would recommend bringing it forward 1 month, so add $6,500 to the budget with the goal of having someone hired by April 1st, rather than May 1st, which is what we originally had in the budget.
Okay.
And then we've also discussed, so I thought I had brought it with me, the $7,200 for the invasive species. Public Works Manager's already spoken to that, but based on the study that we have, they're recommending some pre-priorities of invasive species to be removed, and they would do the work for us, and that would be $7,200, which would then free up
Public Works time.
0.05?
The 0.05 time.
0.05 time.
Yeah, but that'll come again to CSC,
That,
the budget supplemental sheets.
Yes,
The
yes.
details,
The final one.
the final, so we can make a decision at
Yeah.
that point.
but at this point, I'm suggesting adding
Justification.
$7,200 to this, and then at the next meeting, we will have, for the larger ticket items, we'll have more information.
I'm not seeing that 7,200.
Oh, it's because I'm telling you about it verbally.
Oh,
Sorry.
fine, okay.
Yeah. These are all things that happened.
Yeah.
I had a deadline of Thursday for
Yeah,
this,
yeah, yeah.
and all of these things, the quotes and things like that, have all happened after, so I'm just updating
So these
council.
TBDs that we see, internet connection to CLAT, internet connection to pit training trailer, and EOC supplies, what sort of magnitude are we talking about there?
We've requested quotes. We're having trouble getting expedited quotes. Internet connection, Wi-Fi to CLAT.
Well, we just did that in the hall, so we know more.
So the hardwire, the fire department doesn't use our servers, so they don't store any documents on the drive.
Yeah.
Having them connected to our network, you're probably looking at about a $2,000 ask.
Okay.
Plus, I think there's some budget in there for the computers. The internet connection to the pit, there is a TELUS pole and a TELUS connection that was used for Kiewit. We don't know how the ministry got TELUS to connect.
It was an aircraft routing beacon. That's how they got it.
They won't give
for
us
the
a-
Olympics.
They won't give us an internet connection via their TELUS line until we can provide them with an address for the pit, and nobody has an address.
Even though we've given them the number on the pole.
100 Upper Brunswick Road.
Okay.
They just, there is no address, and they just, we've been going
Oh,
on this for about 4 or 5 days. We give them the number on the pole, we say it's your pole, this is the identifying number. We need an address before we can give you Wi-Fi.
If I second Claire's comment, does that give us that address?
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna give it to them anyway.
We can have a council
We'll come up
resolution to
with a-
assign it. It's actually a PID, they need a,
Let's expropriate the pole.
anyway, we're working on it.
I'll ask them.
Yeah,
Okay,
we're taking care of it.
So
but
these
it's-
numbers are
it's-
not so big. The office renovations we're going to need to nail down, obviously.
Yes, and I'm hoping I'll get that any time now.
Just back up to the. I'm just pointing out to council, just for your. Even though, despite my squirming, screaming, shouting, wriggling, it looks like we're up in for the $30,000 generator, which we taxed $15,000 for last year and whatnot. The fire truck reserve, I don't recall that from before.
We had spoken about it. I mean, that's
did?
just something we put down there. At this point, the fire chief has no capital requests this year, other than the burn building, and that's a rebudget. And we had talked about, I believe at the last meeting, perhaps putting something in for a fire truck reserve.
Okay, so I'll just
Again,
make sure that we all
yeah.
see that number there. Yeah.
I mean, this is just getting the general idea of what we're looking at to compare it to what our surplus is without a tax increase at this time. There are some larger numbers I realize to come in, but at the next meeting, the idea is we do kind of a one-page kind of business summary of why we need it and the costs, and for the larger ticket items, we'll be presenting those.
Well, the
at the
largest
next
ticket
meeting.
item on this list is some stairs to the bus stop. That's some pretty good-looking stairs for 80 grand. Yeah. So that's something we want to talk about, do we not? I suppose we should talk about it now. What's our
Well,
alternatives?
Or
We will provide justification
For- at
forms
the next
for each
meeting.
of them with more information and detail.
We beat the crap out of
at
this
the
topic.
February 6th.
Not when it was 80,000. The last time we beat the crap out of it, it was 20,000.
25.
Yeah, well, okay.
25.
Yeah.
That's quite a price increase. Okay.
Although it decreased from the one quote we got
Yeah.
of $250,000.
Yeah.
Okay.
We didn't
Let's
ask
just
for
do
an
this
escalator.
page by page. Anything else on page 127?
Or anything else council would like to see us price out or consider? And if you think of anything, you can send me an email as well, and then we can get some information on it prior to the next meeting. And then the idea is we'd get into some really in-depth discussions at
Yeah.
the February 6th meeting. And would we do that at a CSC, or we could do it at a council meeting?
I think we'd all prefer to not have a CSC
Yeah.
if we can help it.
Okay, fair enough.
So just back to this public works number, the 38 grand. That has a $10,000 item in there, a Hopac compactor for a backhoe.
Yeah.
What's happened to our existing compactor?
It's a plate compactor.
Yeah.
It doesn't have that penetrating depth.
Okay, so it's a different tool. Okay,
Yeah.
fine.
So the whole pack it was basically a hydraulic compactor on the back end of the backhoe.
Yeah.
No jumping jack?
No jumping jack.
And then the next page, can we go there now? 129.
Yes?
So the very top one, the water tanks. CapEx, is the CapEx not 2.71?
No, because some of it's been spent in 2017, the AECom. Like we've
Okay.
because the engineering costs were
Gotcha,
included
gotcha.
in the quote.
And so why is the grant and loan the same? Oh, because it's all grant, it's either grant
Yeah,
or
at
loan.
this point,
It's
it's
a
being
wash.
funded completely. I mean,
Yeah.
it is funny because we did get the loan last year. I'm not really rebudgeting the loan. We're essentially, the accounting term is it will float a surplus in 2017, and then we'll take it from surplus in 2018 to pay for the loan. And obviously, this will change as we get, well, no, hopefully not. It could possibly change when we go to tender and get the amounts.
Sure.
And then we would come to council with a recommendation on if there is a shortfall, how we would fund it.
Yep. And the $9,800 Modi grant, that means is that what's left of the 20,000?
Yes, again, at the end of the day, 20,000 was funded, but we actually budgeted 22.5, so we're rebudgeting the 2,500. And then that work will be done in the spring to finish off the landscaping out front.
I like it.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's
So-
lean, but it's certainly not fat.
No, it's pretty good stuff, well presentation, and I think, I mean, we could, I don't think there's a reason to nitpick the stuff that until we've got the whole picture.
Yeah. Did you not need some money for a potential design of the water pipe, the Mid-Bayview water pipe? How are we going to pay for that otherwise?
We have that's an operating, so
You're going to
under-
absorb that in operating?
You know, in Public Works, we've asked for, we've applied for an infrastructure master plan grant of 10,000.
Well, that's 10,000.
And then we have
Oh,
an
because it's
additional
only a $15,000 project.
20.
think it's
So we have
20,
an
yeah.
additional 10. It's already in the budget under Public Works, but it's not in capital.
Okay, so you've got that, good.
So Pam, your thinking is that you should have this pretty refined by next council meeting?
Yeah, basically, one of the other intentions of showing this to council, if there's something on here that you don't want us to pursue, it was just basically getting your okay that we're going the right direction, and now we'll do the work for the larger ticket items, doing justification for them and more information, and so we'll get a more solid number, and then that helps us determine what the tax rate should be.
The only thing that sticks in my craw is those $80,000 stairs. I'd like to know if there's any way to defer, differentiate, something. Part of the redo on the water tank, have the contractor there. You know, he's going to have a massive excavator there. 80 grand is too much for 80 stairs.
Would a local contractor be more affordable?
This is local
That-
contractor quote.
That's the 80,000
Yeah.
quote, yeah.
I think the big challenge is the demo before you start forming up. But poured in place, is that how you do things these days?
The demo isn't
That
that
kind of a
much.
stair would need to be cast in place.
Yeah.
It's a very organic sort of shape. It's
Mm.
not something that would be.
But the contractor who's going to be digging up the highway tank location
Yeah.
might want to put it in as an incremental.
Yeah, that is gonna be formed in
Yeah.
place, so, yeah, there could be a cost savings there. I'll speak to AECom about that.
You think you could cut this in half into a reserve for it and do it in 2019?
Yeah,
We
could
have
do
already
that.
applied for the grant for it, have we not?
Yeah, we
The
have.
Translink
We
grant.
have applied
Yeah.
for the Translink.
It's somewhat of a safety issue. I mean, it's been bad for several years now. I wouldn't say that kids are falling down the stairs yet, but
Well, we've had one fall so far this year.
edge collapse related or
Edge
snow.
collapse, edge collapse,
Right, okay.
yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
What about like just take out the stairs completely and then surface it with some kind of a sticky, like a
Yeah.
surface
The-
that,
the,
running
traction
track
surface.
stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the person who did fall complained about both the steep slope above and the stairs,
Yeah.
and she fell on the stairs.
Mm.
So removing it would I don't know that we'd be able to provide a surface that would be.
Yeah, the tread width is also not very consistent, so you had to humbledy stumbledy down the thing. So I'm sure we can improve it.
Mhm.
The handrail can be improved.
You will see a justification sheet like we saw last year that explains what the ask is and
Well,
why.
I remember it from last year. The problem is that last year it was 25,000.
Yeah.
It was a little more palatable.
Yeah, so you'll see the differential and why it's gone up, and you'll also see some potential linking to the AECom project, which I'll speak to AECom about.
Okay, so did we make a motion to receive this yet, or did we go straight into discussion? Okay, so that's that a motion. Thanks, and a second.
Yeah.
Further discussion? Yep.
Is there, am I missing it, or is there anything in here for the memorial project, or nothing?
Nothing. You didn't miss it.
So that could be added
That would be nice.
if you provide me with a number.
100K?
Sure, let's go for it.
Ain't gonna happen.
Well, I think we
You don't
talked.
have to do it now, like just,
Okay.
if
Think
you
it
wanna,
through. Yeah,
you can
talk to
email it
Fred.
to me and.
Do you have a number in mind?
Unless you have a
Tonight.
number.
Well, we had talked about a nominal placeholder, but the more we look into it, it's getting less and less nominal. It's really hard to say until we get some more plans going on it. We found a possible vehicle that we can get up to about 50 grand in kind.
Right.
In kind.
Yeah.
But I'm not asking for 50 grand from the village. Sorry, I see you've got an AED down here too.
You might need one or two more.
That's a rebudget. We don't have it yet.
Yeah,
Or
we're
need a
thinking-
double banger.
Yeah, we're thinking of all sorts of ideas of fundraising and everything, but one member of the committee was just saying projects like this often hit 100 grand, so we'd have to really look heavily into fundraising and stuff like that, or else lowering our expectations.
Or making it more Alliance Bay scale.
Yeah.
And grants.
And grants.
Yeah.
Well, one of them is a grant up to 50 grand, and then there's another possibility of 25,000 of in-kind expenses, which.
Well, we'll need to see something pretty soon so that we can, so the council can opine on this. I would be against any delusions of grandeur here. I mean, we're not talking about the Vimy Memorial. We're talking about a little Lions Bay.
Yeah, I handed you the grant application for
You did.
review, and I know you haven't had a chance to look at it. but
Yes.
It goes into detail with the grant proposals.
And was the idea for me just to look at it, or do you want me to complete it, or just
Well,
initially just look at it to see?
If you can give me
Yeah.
feedback on
Okay.
it, like likely.
Yes.
Can we extract a number from you now?
It's almost pointless at this point. Like, we talked about 10,000, but I don't know if that's.
That was, funnily enough, the number I had in my mind, but okay.
So is the intent still to have it completed for November? Because, okay, because just with all these grants and everything, it looks like if you got this information, we could put it in the 2019 budget, but I know you were looking at attempting to get it completed.
No,
for
we
November.
really wanted to get it
Yeah.
done by this November because it's the 100th centenary of the end of the war and all that good stuff.
I just wasn't sure if it was feasible yet, but I'll be able to see when I look at the grant when the decisions are made and when the grant will be granted.
And we have to have plans before you can even submit it, so we are premature right now.
Nobody caught my, it's not the 100th centenary, because that would make it 10,000 years. It's the centenary.
Yeah, right.
To the Disappearing Tank Act too.
In what?
To the Disappearing Tank Act too.
What, the Monty Python skit?
Oh, okay, right, yes. Yeah.
Okay, we're getting punch drunk here, guys. Let's move on. Do we have a motion on it now?
Yes.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? No more talk of tanks? All in favour? Vote that carried. Okay, let's move to the encroachment application. I'm actually not checking back with the agenda. Are you, Peter? Just pull me up if I because I'm just going by the package right now. Okay, so this is next. Okay, so the report's in front of us. I trust we've all seen it. The recommendation is voluminous, so we'll take that recommendation as the motion, unread. We'll take it as read. And it will need a second. Thanks, for, Fred. Nye, do you want to give us any colour on this one?
Only that this will be registered on title, correct, Peter?
Yep.
Yeah. And primarily due to the scope and the nature of the retaining wall and the cantilevered driveway, which would be cantilevered over our portion of land.
What is the device that cantilevers it? Is it girders?
It's concrete.
Oh, so rebar.
So a retaining, I think the last page, so page 144 of 204, gives you an idea. It shows the rock wall.
Oh, I see. Yeah, okay.
And a concrete turntable to allow for the car to be turned.
That's gotta be the first in that.
Oh, you read that right.
Yeah.
I thought they were putting a turn on
Maybe they'd like to build stairs.
Okay. Yeah, well, this is good. I happen to know this property quite well because I used to live next door to it. Not that that's apropos of anything. My only concern was, just wanted to make sure I understood. The neighbours are good with this? So the neighbours have been consulted?
Well, it did go to the board, so whatever was communicated that way. I'm not sure if...
But is this a variance?
There is a variance
for an
attached.
application.
Which board?
Board of Variance.
But why would it go to the Board of Variance?
Because they requested zero front yard setback.
I did, so thank you, that was going to be my question. So we look at the corner of the house on page 142. It says proposed studio garage. There's a corner of that thing that touches that dashed line. Is that the setback line?
The setback line is here.
Oh, that's, hey?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, there it says 7.5 meters front yard setback. So the existing house is built within the setback correctly, just touching it. But all this new stuff it does require a variance. And the Board of Variance gave that variance?
Yes, and the neighbors were there, both sides.
And what was the reaction?
Whatever was presented, they agreed to it. There's a lot of trees and shrubbery and everything around that.
Although they've cut a lot of those trees for the better,
so
mind you.
apparently it will-
Yeah. And the septic field is also in the setback. Is that kosher? That's not something I believe that our whatever it is allows.
For zoning?
I know you can construct, and the building, is it the building bylaw speaks, what is it that speaks to setbacks? Building bylaw. The zoning.
Zoning. I
don't think the zoning
don't
speaks to
recall.
septic fields.
No, I don't think it does.
And that's a whole different thing, right? Because you've got potential for grey/brown/black water egress. Right on the boulevard boundary. So that's going to have to be reviewed. Luckily, septic fields can go just about anywhere, as long as it's downhill. So between that line, not the setback line, but the other one, the heavy dashed line, what is that line?
That's the area of the encroachment.
Oh, that's just... No, not the dashed line, the very long dashes, the centimetre long dashes. Is that the property? No.
No, I think that's just a longitudinal orientation line.
Okay,
Yes.
fine.
Which one? The heavy long dash is the property line.
It's the property line, and then the short dashes is just how the area of encroachment has been denoted.
Okay,
It
fine.
could have been denoted by going right on top of the property line with a heavy black pen or something, but it's just showing just inside.
So who checked this against the zoning? The building inspector? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, okay, so I mean, what we're not opining about the zoning right now, or compliance there too, we're talking about encroachment.
Just the encroachment,
Yeah. Although I would secondarily just informally request, Peter, that you just check on that septic field there. You got that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure that that's allowed, but I'm not sure. So, there's a motion and it's been seconded?
Question?
Yes?
I see at the foot of each one of these, it's got Lidstone Company. Why is the paperwork coming, like the diagrams coming from that?
Peter will have a very
Lidstone,
good...
the footer represents a standard template agreement that we get from Lidstone. So this legal agreement has been vetted by Lidstone and it's their template with our modification.
That is on the encroachment agreement, not on their diagrams.
Yeah.
Okay, I got you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I called that into question last time.
Okay, thanks.
Ready for the question? The motion is to approve the encroachment, and it's been seconded, as recommended. Would we like to read the recommendation just to be sure? Maybe we should. So, the motion is that the application for encroachments at 249 Bayview Road be approved subject to and in accordance with the following terms. The applicant shall sign a standard license for occupation agreement with respect to the encroachment in substantially the form of attachment A, as prepared by the Village of Lions Bay, providing for insurance of the works and indemnification of the municipality from any and all liability and costs related to the driveway encroachment. Okay, I don't know what I had the word driveway there, but that's fine. The applicant shall pay the sum of $800 in accordance with Schedule 2 of Fees Bylaw number 497 of 2016 in respect of the encroachment agreement to be registered in the Land Title Office. So that's the motion. It's been seconded. Any further discussion? Call the question. All in favour? And opposed? That carries. I look forward to seeing the turntable. And we go on to police report, is that correct?
No.
No?
Public Works Manager, CWWF remote.
Okay, alright.
So the revised schedule is out. The tender is scheduled to be posted on February 13th with a construction site meeting or a pre-tender meeting on the 22nd and a close on March 21st. So that's a 5-week tendering period. And it's designed to entice the larger companies who did not bid at the original tender. So at the original tender opening, there were 4 companies, all of them representing smaller companies. The larger tank companies did not bid. And we received word from one of them, it was because of the tight timelines.
Another advantage of having gotten an extension. And now you briefed the IC on this on Monday, but you might want to just bring the rest of council up to speed in terms of the what the IC saw as a fairly accelerated delivery timeline.
Right. We're hoping to have everything done by the end of September. Yeah. Essentially. It provides for... I think it's adequate. It's not accelerated. I think it's a regular construction time frame for the project.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there are also considerations about water supply over the summer, which all have to be dealt with, and
fire flows
that will all be dealt with. So
right.
This has got a many moving part project, but I think it's fair to say that Nai's got a fantastic handle on it, so I'm very comfortable with. It's only the stuff we haven't thought of that's going to come back to bite us, but we've thought about just about everything else, right?
Yeah.
Did you have any?
So the tender date now is set for
February 13th.
February 13th.
Survey for the control valve on Bayview started yesterday, and that'll continue. The design work for that control valve is ongoing. The laydown area and the potential on-site storage of construction waste generated by the demolition of the tanks has been cleared up, so that will be in the tender, and that will take away a lot of ambiguity for the project.
I did mean to ask you about that. So on-site storage means it's going to stay there?
It's going to stay in Lions Bay. That's what it means.
For future crushing and used to fix the school parking lot, right?
No. No. It's just going to be...
You notice I never give up, right?
It's going to be stored on-site in Lions Bay. That negates the hauling charges to Mitchell Island or
Well, we've
other
always wanted a big
sites.
pile of broken concrete and rebar, so that's going to be good.
Yeah.
Where is that going to be?
It'll be in the open space just above the Harvey tank. It's right now. It's a flat area that we have the two raw water storage tanks.
So we used to burn our brush.
Yeah.
Until we realized that was not as smart.
So it'll only be on half of that area because half of it is in Crown land, half of it is on municipal.
Okay, so if that turns out to have been a bad idea, we can always remove it later. Is there any sort of requirement to have a lined pit or?
No, not for construction or not for concrete. No.
Okay.
No.
Are we happy with this? A big pile of concrete?
It'll be buried. You won't see it.
Oh, buried.
Oh.
That's fine then. Out of sight.
Okay, okay.
Is this how things are done?
It is, yeah. There's been numerous projects in West Van where they store materials on site.
When you say store, I think you mean dispose of.
It's
Store for a
permanent
long
storage.
time?
Permanent
If
storage.
you want to reuse it, it's there.
Yeah, that's true, and I do.
Yeah.
When maybe this mystery machine is actually a concrete crusher. Okay, that's fine. Thanks, Knight. Good stuff. Let's have a motion to receive that verbal update and a second. Any further discussion? All in favour of receipt? That is opposed. That carries. Nothing from the mayor. Nothing from council. I assume nothing from committees.
Or it's on table.
On table.
Be on table.
Oh, beg your pardon. Committees, yes. Just before we get to this guy, Fred, do you care to make an update on the IC, which was Monday?
Well, I think the big issue is what Himes and Jeff had discussing. The only other one is our concern for the infiltration gallery on Magnesia, and with the possibility of Harvey being down. We don't want to have any slides blocking Magnesia because we could be in a difficult spot.
That was the thing that I was going for. So the timing around September is that's well before slide hazards, so that Mag has a very low risk of being blocked when Harvey is out. That was the reason for the September delivery. In the spirit of wanting to keep these things off table and off verbal, we'll defer any further reporting to acceptance receipts of the minutes.
Yeah, minutes are in progress.
Yeah, yeah, and of the previous, or has council seen the previous? No, because we only
no,
approved
they
them at
haven't.
this past meeting. Yeah. Okay, good. Okay, so that's fine. I'm glad you mentioned that because that was the reason why the September date was significant in my mind. Was it reduced the risk of rock slide into closing Mag. Okay, and then there's two recommendations coming from the Council Strategy Committee meeting of this afternoon. I'll read them for the record. That the CSC, that's Council Strategy Committee, recommend that Council direct the Public Works Manager to post for and hire a full-time Public Works operator, and that the Council Strategy Committee recommend that Council direct the CFO to secure an additional vehicle lease when we renew our current lease agreement. This has been discussed. Can I have a motion? And a second, any further discussion? This comes from committee. In fact, if it comes from committee, it doesn't need a second, as I read in somewhere. All in favour? Opposed? That carries. And the community signage plan, as opposed to the mayor's community signage plan, I think we've graduated to a more generic, widely accepted thing. That the Council Strategy Committee recommends the Council to proceed with the community signage project to be refined for colour and format, themes and wording format themes and wording, with budget to come from the remainder of the parking signage budget, presently estimated at 1,500. Can I have a motion?
15,000.
15,000.
What did I say?
1,500.
1,000, thank you.
That's better.
No. Okay, that's a motion, no second required. All in favour? Opposed? That carries. And now we get to the emergency services report, which I still have not asked them to stop saying it's within our jurisdiction. Anything to comment on here? Fred?
Whenever somebody's listing something, they put miscellaneous, and the miscellaneous number exceeds the.
Yeah, that's never good.
others.
Yeah.
I wonder about it, because we've got Lions Bay Village responses, other is 10, and the total of the others identified are 7, so I'm kind of curious to know what other is.
It's a privacy issue here, we're not allowed to tell you. Privacy. Privacy.
Put it in football.
Yeah. I think you sort of have to take this for what it's worth.
Yeah. I guess I wasn't serious.
Presumably, yeah. Yeah. Anything else? So, Fred, would you care to make a motion to receive this report? Thanks. And second? Norm, you can second it. Thanks. All in favour? Opposed? That carries. Okay. What's next? This thing? Secondary suite request for decision? Okay, so there's a fairly voluminous report in front of us with some ancillary material. With two recommendations: that the secondary suite surcharge bylaw number 536 of this year, our first, be introduced and read a first and second time, and that the bylaw notice enforcement bylaw number 385 of 2006, amendment bylaw number 537 2018 to take care of all the necessary things, assuming the secondary suite, the first one, gets approved, be introduced and read a first and second time too. Would anybody care to move that at this stage of the game, or do we want to have a little chat first, or where do we go? I don't see a motion, so I want. Okay, is that a motion?
Well, for clarity, because it is convoluted as you say, so I think for me I'm going to page 149 of 204, preferred option 2A, which is the motion is deleting number 1, number 2, and proceeding.
So these are the options of the report. So sorry, just say that again. I missed it.
Well, I think my recommendation is option 2.
2A.
Yep.
Okay. So that is applying the secondary suite surcharge to everybody.
Who has a suite?
Who has a suite, I mean, yes. An occupied suite.
Yeah.
Occupied as now defined. Okay.
And to editorialize, this is the kicking the can down the road with gravity.
Well, it's not. This one is actually retrieving the can from the ditch and asking for trouble, without anything ancillary to. The kicking the can down the road was deciding to retain the secondary suite fee. So yeah, I have a few questions that I'll tell you now that I will be opposed to this recommendation, as you know, because I oppose the secondary suite fee as a basic position, but that's just me. But a few questions just to help my understanding. Staff was directed to prepare a declaration. Is that what we see here, Peter?
That's a draft declaration.
That's the draft declaration. Okay, good. Okay, so that's fairly unequivocal, and there are provisions. If you don't answer truthfully, how we'll know that, I don't know, but we'll find out.
They don't answer at all. That's an easy one, but yeah, if we all, to be a case of if you determine after the fact that they didn't answer truthfully, or then it's.
So what if somebody says, I refuse to answer this, and writes all over it and sends it in? That's a violation?
Yeah.
It's not a violation, it's a bylaw infraction.
Yeah, it's contravention.
Contravention. violation means it's subject to court and $10,000 fine. But we always have the get out saying, "I will just give you a ticket instead." Okay, got that one. And the date on the mayor's message, January.
Sorry, just
Yeah,
to stop you
yeah,
there.
shoot.
We still have, within the bylaw, we still have the provision that says we can take you to court.
Yeah, yeah.
And penalties are between $2,000 and $10,000.
Okay, I'm jumping in here because obviously this is near and dear to me. The occupied definition, did you mean one continuous month or 31 days in a year?
Means inhabited for periods of 1 month or longer. So if it's the month of February, then it's 28 days, or 29 in every 4 days.
Or if it's from the 4th of March to the 3rd of April, that's a month as well. So that's the month. It's a continuous month, okay. Who says that the 40% number is the right number?
That, as I understand it, was something that was fairly thoroughly vetted at the time the surcharge fee was brought in to begin with. Comparisons were made with many other communities, and that was a fairly standard number that was deemed appropriate at the time.
I'll just remind us all that that was when a good two-thirds, I don't remember what the number was, of the water bill was billed as parcel tax. So when we rescinded the parcel tax and put it onto utility, everybody all of a sudden, secondary suite fee more than doubled, I think. Is that right, Pam? Do you remember?
It didn't more than double, but it did go up.
It went up significantly because the parcel tax now became a utility fee, which the secondary suite people had to pay 40% of. So that number is now way higher than that original analysis.
Right, but if the intent of the fee is to, as the OCP requested, or the policy in the OCP says, it should reflect some fair contribution by those with secondary suites towards the cost of providing utilities for secondary suites. So if the true cost of providing those utilities is higher, and now it truly reflects what the cost is, then it's appropriate.
Yeah, that doesn't take into account how many people actually live on the parcel, of course.
Oh yeah, I know. I don't.
There's families of 5 that
issues
have none, and there's a family of 1 in the main dwelling and 1 in the secondary suite, and they pay 40% more. But okay, yeah.
I think all we can do is go with the fact that if you have someone in a secondary suite, you have more people using utilities than if you don't have someone in a secondary suite. Period. If it was vacant, you wouldn't have as much use.
Yeah. Yeah. And the other one is more a generic question, actually not so much on the bylaw itself. How feasible is it in the questionnaire that goes out in the utility bill to ask some other questions, specifically how do people heat their houses? And I'm going to the wood smoke burning thing, but this is a touch point, and how many occupants are on the parcel. Is that available to us, or is that not something you want to do in a utility bill? And I have a few more, but it's a general question. Would it be fair to put that into the utility bill? We could filter out the ones that are a little sort of private, like how many occupants. Maybe that's a little too.
Yeah,
close
my
to the-
concern would be privacy.
Yeah.
I mean, only Stats Canada asks that information, generally.
Correct. So, but how you heat your house? I mean, that's neither here nor there. But it's heat pump, oil furnace, wood, combination, baseboard, whatever. Why? Because
it could be a box on the building inspector's inspection sheet, because every single one's got to be inspected, so we could obtain the information out of
that's
it.
only the people who nominate themselves for secondary suites. I'm talking about all houses. I actually started a SurveyMonkey survey. There were a whole bunch of infrastructure questions that we wanted to know. Whatever, do you collect rainwater? But I quickly realized, given the response we get to SurveyMonkey, that's not going to get us. We need a census. Okay, anyway, that's neither here nor there at this stage of the game, so I'll leave that part there. I'm stopping talking. Fred, go.
Oh, sorry,
shoot for now.
If I can. I just want to draw your attention to the attachment that was provided with respect to previous council's initial traveling down this path of seeking a declaration from everybody and then having it blow back on them and changing course. So I just want to make sure that council had read that and had an opportunity to
That's on page
consider
154.
that, before moving forward yourselves down that path. We do already, every single person on their utility bill gets a bill that shows what the secondary suite amount is, if you have a secondary suite. So, in a sense, we're almost negative billing at the moment, except that they don't have to pay it unless they say, yeah, I got a secondary suite, so here you go. But those that, not only those that have a secondary suite are currently obliged to declare that they have one. Nobody else is required to make that declaration. So if you want to pursue the notion that everyone should be made to say whether or not they have one, and thereby go down that path of enforcement in terms of ferreting them out who they haven't declared, and getting all of those who do have secondary suites into our registry and into our system, then I think you have to go the route of making everyone declare. But there may be consequences.
Well, it's funny you mention that, because that's what I was just about to address, and that I've never supported the negative billing aspect of it, and I don't now. One of the comments I would have about it is our community is primarily a single-family residence, and should be dealt with as the default assumption that it's a single-family home. I think the onus should be on the people to declare them if they have one, not the regular people to say they don't have one. I think I don't know how many people read their stuff very clearly, and it would be a real shame for somebody to get billed for something they don't really have just because they're in a hurry and they didn't check the right box or whatever. It just seems like it's the backwards way of doing something, and I really don't feel comfortable with it. Failure to declare shouldn't trigger a penalty, unless of course you do have a suite, then it should trigger the penalty, but
How would we know?
we shouldn't assume everybody has a secondary suite until we know.
Well, only 35 people in the village have one, so it's not very many.
I think there's gotta be another method to go for it. This isn't it.
60?
Well,
Sorry.
Well,
It
there's
can't-
60 on our list, but only 35 are
Occupied,
By non-family members.
or non-family.
but there's
No, 35 owners declared they had a suite in 2017, 13 claimed the family member exclusion.
But why should we harass the other portion of the 500 homes just for going about life as normal? I mean,
Well, my answer to that is, do you believe the 35 number?
no, I don't.
Yeah.
But
So, are we the police?
no, but then
Yes, we are.
people with even of our greatest number of homes that would have them, it's only maybe 20% of the whole population, whole number of houses in here. So why put the onus on everybody else when it's not everybody else's problem? I don't know. I don't feel comfortable with negative billing at all. In fact, I was one of the people that wrote in and complained about it the last time. And here I am.
Careful what you wish for.
Yes.
Remember, I apologize for, actually, since I've already got the recommendation in place, that I can't read my own notes, considering I put the motion forward for the...
It hasn't been seconded, you can always withdraw it.
Well, in fact, I proposed to do that, because I was wrong, and my questions for Peter on this, and this is on page 152, and this is for item 7, and this is when the declaration, so at the end of the, where the italicized stuff, immediate family member or a volunteer firefighter, would that be on March 31st, or is that implied?
actually, okay, so we determined that date's a little too tight, so
Okay.
we're gonna change it to July 13th.
I had that marked as well, yeah.
Okay,
Or,
which would rather
to be in line with
counter my
tax due date.
suggestion that we delete that stuff. Thank you.
Anybody else? I had one more question on the occupied definition. Are those two tests? It first must be inhabited for a period of 1 month or longer within a calendar year, and it must be advertised, or is it or?
No, and includes advertising, so if you're, so that, what it means is.
I see. That
is-
also qualifies it as you
Yeah,
having one.
yeah.
Whether or not it's occupied.
Yeah. Yeah, if you're actively advertising to have somebody in it, and just at the time you make the declaration, you haven't got somebody, you're still.
Well, what if you're a terrible advertiser and you can't write an ad to save your life and you'll never get an occupied? You can't be penalised for having an ad out there. My problem is, on the 29th of March, when I'm filling in my return, it's not occupied. Kick the guy out.
Yeah, are you gonna?
What are we
occupy-
trying to achieve with this, other than fair billing for utilities? I mean, I thought there's a safety element here to people building suites that aren't up to code and don't meet the minimum fire egress requirements.
Yep.
So
I'm not part of this discussion.
You're making his day.
well, I
Was-
know, but I brought this up at the very beginning when I was even running for this position. Like, I feel very strongly about that. You can't have suites that are unsafe.
That's right, that's.
So
that's our
how do
primary
we
objective.
police that? There needs to be a tool to police that.
Well, it seems like the deterrent would be to get rid of the secondary suite charge and all in all. And then you'll have people maybe more likely to volunteer their property and we can get it inspected.
So our assessment of that suggestion was that it's not the fee that people are trying to avoid in not declaring that they have a secondary suite. It's the cost of making their secondary suite safe in accordance with our bylaw requirements. And so we don't think that deleting the surcharge is going to result in everybody stepping forward and saying, oh, I do have a suite, and
After all.
come and inspect it.
Which I don't buy that, by the way. I believe that most people don't know there's an inspection requirement, and if they do, they don't know what it will cost. And for some it will be onerous. For example, when my suite, my grandfather's suite was inspected, required 2 fire doors, connected CO and smoke alarm. I think the whole thing was about $2,000. So, yes, significantly more than a fee. Now, mine's not only not occupied by family members, it's not occupied, so I don't pay the fee. But I fully wanted it inspected. I'm grateful that the village cares enough to do it. But, okay, that's me. Yes, that's my goal. And I want to do anything. I'm not allowed to reopen debate, nor will I, so that would be impolite. So we're not going to re-debate whether the fee should be rescinded. What we're debating now is a motion that's been made, not seconded, on how that fee is going to look. Is it going to be, is the exclusion for family members going to be removed? And there's also some consideration about a positive or a negative return.
And also whether or not you want to include an exemption for volunteer firefighters.
Yeah.
To address the safety, the idea is if we sent out with the bills the declaration form, I mean, we wouldn't be billing them. It would be, they'd declare whether or not they had a suite, and if they did have a suite, then they would have to pay the fee. But they wouldn't be, we wouldn't bill them ahead of time assuming they had a suite, but it's the form. And then they'd have to fill it out, and we'd send it to every homeowner, and they would be required, and there'd be penalties if they didn't fill it out. And the idea is we then get a proper registry of how many suites they are, compare it to the list we have now that have 60 suites on it, and go through and inspect them and make them
I think
safe.
that's an important distinction. Can I just re-emphasize that? It's not quite as bad as you're making out, Fred. It's just you have to fill in a return. That's all.
You have to declare if you have a suite or not.
I think that's valid. Just like you have to fill in a tax return. Even if it's a null return, you still have to file a return. Everybody.
Yeah, but your tax return's assuming that you've had some income throughout the whole year. This one's assuming you have a secondary suite unless you declare not.
No, you're saying no, I don't.
It's not assuming that you have a secondary suite unless you declare not. It's saying, tell
Let
us
us
one
know.
way or the other. We're not making an assumption that you do or you don't. We just want to know. There's a positive obligation to report. That's all it is.
I feel like it's approaching the backwards method of getting to the right result.
But now, how is this actually different to what we have now?
They're
We
not
have,
required to send it in, and they don't. It's just on the bottom of their bill. They can check off if they have a suite.
well, the questions have always been in the wrong order. The bylaw was written before in such a way that would force you to send in the thing, but we never actually fulfilled that. So this at least takes care of that. I believe the bylaw, as it's written, correct me if I'm wrong,
This bylaw?
yeah, implied that you were required to file a return. Because you had to, the question was, do you have a suite? Yes, no.
You talk about the previous, the existing bylaw,
Yeah.
not the one that's on the table.
Correct, yeah, the existing bylaw.
Okay, so the existing bylaw, I don't believe,
Where is the
I
existing
don't
bylaw? Is it
believe
in
it
here?
required you to make the declaration.
I think there, it stipulated that there was a return, and the first question that it stipulated was, do you have a secondary suite, yes or no?
Yeah, it didn't say you have to file the declaration.
Yeah, well, maybe so, but why would you tick no, whoop, in the bin? That's where it's
People don't return it at all.
No, they don't return it, no. In fact,
Well,
a lot
they
of
pay
people,
online.
Oh, but no,
They-
sorry, so the questionnaire that went in the utility bill didn't reflect what the
it wasn't
bylaw
a
said.
questionnaire, it's on every bill. It's,
Yeah,
this
no, I
is what
mean-
you owe, if you have a suite, this is what you owe. Do you have a suite?
No,
Is
there
it
were
occupied
questions.
by? There were, but what I'm saying is there's no obligation to fill them out, and a lot of people don't. We just get, a lot of people just pay online.
But
If
just,
they pay
just
the higher amount, oh, I guess they have a suite, or a lot of people pay it in and don't check off whether or not they have a
so
suite.
those questions that came on the utility bill were not the questions stipulated in the bylaw.
But
For 3
regardless of
years.
that,
You
I'm
know,
just,
do you remember this? Every time the utility bill came, I said, Peter, it's still not what the bylaw says. Oh, yeah. Remember? Yes,
I remember you saying that, yeah.
but regardless of that, I'm saying they don't fill it out, because they're not required to. We don't get a lot of
Yes,
response
because the
from
questionnaire
that.
is not
Yeah.
what the bylaw stipulated.
I don't
before.
think that will make any difference to whether or not they send it in. But in a lot of cases.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Okay, so this one requires you to send it in
Yeah.
somehow.
So, can I talk about staff
Yeah.
time? So, on that note, there will be big implications to staff time if we do this. We would send them out and then we'd have to follow up. And that's extremely challenging. Like, for example, we sent out, we're trying to follow up on the ones we know now to get the inspections done. And I've lost that piece of paper. We sent out,
27, I sent out 27 follow-up letters for final inspection.
that's at 27, and only 4 have responded in the last 4 weeks.
And those 27 were those newly found out about? Or?
No, they're on their original list of 60, and then we're just following that for final inspection.
For final inspection.
And so we've only had a response from 4, so they were mailed out, and we don't have contact information for the residents, so it's very challenging to, we have their address, but if they don't respond, I mean, all we can do is send them another letter, but we can't phone them, we can't really email them, because we don't have that information. So that would be a lot of additional staff time. We would probably have to hire a temp to follow up. And then it's the building inspections. I mean, we're struggling to inspect the 60 that we know about, so it would be some additional building inspector time as well. So it will become a budget item in order to follow this up.
And if we don't have a positive obligation to declare, then we're basically having to go around and ferret out these people who don't respond to our letters. And so then that means getting a bylaw officer to go out and
Which we don't have.
start walking around and checking out, seeing whether people have suites, looking.
If
follow
we
up on the ads
we
and
formally allow
so
secondary
forth.
suites, what are our obligations to enforce the regulations?
Well, I would say that we need to enforce the regulations
Yeah, I know, but
because
are we
otherwise.
obliged to from a liability standpoint?
Yeah, I would say yes.
So it's a bigger question.
You know, if
We allow secondary suites, we must enforce the rules around them, and those are the safety rules. And so now we're talking about how to get those safety rules. I mean, if the person refuses to do that, then they're in violation of something, right? So the liability, our liability, is somewhat covered off. But if we don't even inspect,
well, no, but I mean, even pursuing those that don't respond to our letters that we know have secondary suites, which is like, okay, are they? We don't know if they're renting out or not renting out, and so we've got to go and start knocking on doors and stuff. That's that's.
but I just I will yield to temptation and point out if we don't have a fee, the consideration whether they're occupied or not is irrelevant. The inspection requirement is independent of occupied.
We still need to know whether or not they have. Well, occupied is important.
Right.
You know, if nobody's occupying that suite, we really don't care. I mean, we want it to be inspected and approved because it might be occupied at some point in the future. But if it's not occupied now, and it may never be, then whether or not it's approved or not isn't as, okay, so
It's not as
ideally,
timely.
yes. Ideally, yes, we do, but it's not as vital because there isn't the same elevated sense of risk. But obviously, we want all suites to be inspected and approved, especially those that are being occupied.
Especially starting with the ones currently occupied, yeah.
So it's a process of determining how to do that.
And so one solution is this return, which you are obliged to fill in, and penalties for not. Not insubstantial penalties either. 250, right?
No, 100 if you don't return the declaration.
100.
If it's
you get
late penalty is 150. early payment is 50.
So they don't fill in the return, but they get a discount for early payment of the fine. So are people just going to pay the fine every year?
Don't know.
It's a lot cheaper than the secondary
but
suite
it's
fee.
not a one. Every day that you don't comply
Is another ticket.
is another infraction, another contravention of the bylaw. So could be.
Okay, well.
I mean, not that we would necessarily pursue and collect payment for $100 a day from someone who wasn't responding. However, that is always there. Screening policy for contraventions would enable us to write off everything other than, one ticket or whatever. If they say, okay, sorry, here's my declaration.
Council has the opportunity here to shoot itself in the foot. And you may proceed, because I've already declared my intentions here.
We currently do have a norm. We have 60 that sort of on our list of suites, and the building inspector is now going through those to finalize some of the inspections. Some of them were parking, and we changed the parking requirements, so he's just going in to do a final. So, I mean, we do have some information. It's not like we don't know how many are out there. It's just how many more than the 60 we know about are there, and we don't know. So this was our
What I
attempt to
know is
determine.
my understanding from people close to council who used to live on Isleview, that every house on Isleview has a secondary suite. Every house. And I believe there's 60 houses on Isleview. It's all anecdotal, right? I have no proof, and I'm not going to go knock on somebody's door.
But that's kind of what we're going to be doing
Yeah.
if this goes through.
Well, yeah. I'm not going to repeat myself, because I would be repeating myself. So there's a motion, and the motion is, Ron, would you care to restate it, just so that we know? But I think you said you wanted to change the motion?
Yes, so this will be
This is the note.
the change.
So, did you write that motion down?
No, he just agreed to.
I chose
option
2A.
Fine, okay.
One and two.
So
I haven't
unchoose that.
written anything down.
Yeah, okay.
So I've unchosen that. So this would be option number 3, prior to giving second reading to bylaw, if I amended by altering one or more of, oh, sorry, not the penalty amounts, could care less about that. But I would just, well, actually, I wouldn't refer them back to staff for alternative directions, but just amendment here.
You don't have to choose one of these options. You can make up your own if you want.
Well, I'm prepared to go forward with what's on the table with amendments.
What amendments?
Well, I mean, they're okay, so I mean, the issues here are, so for clarity, as near as I can see, the immediate family member and the fire department volunteer stand, so that stays as is.
Don't look at me.
Well, that's where I'm going.
So are you saying those exemptions should be in the bylaw?
They are in, so it stays as written.
Well, we haven't even discussed
that's
the
written, they're
firefighter one.
removed. There
The
is no now
firefighter is a can of
exemption.
worms. What happens if the guy leaves? Must this person now come to knocking on the door saying, sorry, my firefighter exemption no longer exists, I'm going to pay my
Oh, because
secondary...
he was only there for 6 months? Okay, well, everything's a point in time. So on the March 31st or July 1st
so if you have a firefighter...
declaration, and he was there.
I think the idea is to have an incentive for people to make those available to firefighters that we know that our volunteer firefighters have a place to stay. If they leave in 6 months,
Good luck to them.
should we pull back the bonus that we gave to the homeowner for doing that?
The
I
exemption.
don't think so. They went forward in good faith and provided that accommodation to that firefighter. That they did what we wanted them to do. They'll probably turn around and try and find another one to rent to.
Okay.
So.
Yeah, I think that's the key point to that part, because the volunteer firefighters are always looking for places to stay, so I don't think a suite is gonna be empty for long,
Yeah.
if that helps.
I'm sure you can come up with tests around that to prove that the person is a firefighter and not a wannabe or whatever, but okay, that's fine. Okay, so
There you go. Declaration stands.
the immediate family member provision
It's fine.
exclusion
Stays.
stays. And the volunteer firefighter.
For me, it does.
So the drivers there are.
The drivers.
The firefighter one's obvious, is to
Firefighter,
provide
yeah.
accommodation for firefighters.
And I'm not sick of the firefighters there for 3 months. I mean, it's a point in time thing, and kill the administration. I think Peter said the declaration date. I thought March 31st, but you said July, I think.
A little bit, yeah. Extend it.
Okay. And for me, the rest can stand.
Did you want to talk about the 40% surcharge, given that there's been a huge windfall now because of the increase in utility rate? So the original number, which was presumably an absolute number, has doubled. Because the secondary suite fee now is what, Pam? $7.95.
I'm not sure.
It's around there.
Probably, yeah. For water, sewer, and solid waste.
Yeah. While we're doing that, let's just put a motion to extend the meeting. Let's just go to midnight. Oh no, we can only do it an hour at a time, right? So until 11 o'clock. Thanks. And a second. All in favour, opposed, carried. Okay, we're.
So it's a $7.95, which is bumped 40%. So back to
So $7.95 is the 40%.
Is the 40%.
Thereabouts. Like, it changes every year, right? It depends on the utility bill.
Different for Calvin Grove. 1032 or something like that.
Yeah, because they have a sewer charge as well, so that gets up to 40% or so.
I think we should be a little more generous with the residents on that one. I'm stuck on a number.
How about 0?
Well, for relatives, of course, fine. Firefighters, 0.
Okay, well that's what it is. It's waived for them.
Yeah.
No, I'm talking about regular. You know where I stand, but
Well, now
I
we're
want to
into
facilitate the debate.
Okay, so okay, so we waived it, so let's call it as it stands for now, and we can debate this issue and put it to bed.
Well, we're doing
That
first and
piece.
second reading. Well, we can do first and second and change it for third, right, Peter?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else? Okay, so that's the motion. Everybody clear enough on what that motion is? It's essentially the
Number 1.
It's essentially
No,
option number 1.
No, it's not. The family.
With
In-
Not amending it.
You're talking about
No.
deleting section A, right?
No.
No,
No,
it's
it's just number 1, as the bylaw as written.
Yeah, as written.
I believe the bylaw written no longer has the family
No,
exemption.
it says written with the family
Yeah,
exemption.
Sorry.
it's in there.
I think it had
This
it.
is bolded so that they know that it's,
Okay. That's what I
it's an option
misunderstood.
to remove it or keep it. I would, however, if we're gonna keep that in, I would reorder the,
Definitions.
the definitions.
Yep.
I wanted them standing out at the front.
Yep.
So I would put them in their appropriate places alphabetically.
And I would suggest that you need to maybe tighten up a little bit on the occupied, but that's not here in a bit. So that's a motion. Thank you.
Yes.
Everybody clear on the motion now? It's as written. Just to summarize, 40% surcharge except for firefighters and immediate family members as defined. The rest stays pretty much the same. There's the motion. Second, please. Oh, and for full disclosure, the return, the information return, as proposed. Which,
Not necessarily as drafted though,
well,
but a mandatory.
mandatory for all.
Well, actually, okay, so it's give both bylaws 2 readings without amendment and move forward with the mandatory declaration, I suppose would be the proper motion?
I
or-
suppose, is that not part of the, oh,
It's
no,
not,
that's not in the
It's
bylaw.
not a schedule to the bylaw.
Yeah, yeah, okay.
Sorry, say that again, Peter?
It's just number 1, option 1, and move forward with mandatory declaration.
You want to
Is
split
that,
the,
is that correct, Ron?
yeah, we can't split them because they're part and parcel, they're the same thing, so I can't ask for a split motion on that one. Need a second?
I'm struggling with the secondary suite declaration language, because you might be penalizing people that are doing everything right. They're paying their taxes for their secondary suite. They've had it inspected maybe a few years back, and they just fail to fill out this declaration. Yet they're paying their taxes, and yet they're in compliance.
Well, I believe there's an allowance for
If-
forgetfulness and omission. It's willful not wanting to fill it out, right? Refusal.
If they were to pay their secondary suite fee, we would simply, and they didn't return this, we would simply follow up with them and say, hey, we noticed you paid your secondary suite fee, we presume that you have a secondary suite. In fact, you're on our list, however, we see that you're still looking for final inspection. A, please return the form, tick the boxes, and B, make an appointment for the building inspector to come by. Something like that.
What if it's somebody
Or
like me,
variation therefore.
fully inspected, unoccupied, and
Well, then why would you pay the fee?
I wouldn't.
He was talking about penalizing somebody who's paid the fee.
Well, no, I think
doing
you
it
mean
with-
somebody hasn't filled in the
Generally,
return.
someone who's in
Hasn't returned.
compliance, who's in compliance.
Yeah.
How do we not harass that person?
Well, if they pay the fee,
No fee. Me. Use me as an
no,
example.
he's saying the
He's
person
in
who's
compliance.
full
I said in
compliance.
compliance. In compliance. So
Fee or not fee?
you've had your suite inspected. No one's in it. You're not paying the secondary suite.
You're in compliance
You're in
too.
compliance,
But I don't send in a return.
but you don't send in a return.
It's only for the ones who paid the fee, then we would contact them, if we could contact them. That is the big challenge, is we will have difficulty contacting them, because we have little contact information for the residents. And that's where the extra work comes in, for all of these
Oh, you got that here,
stat debts.
If he didn't send in the form, then we would send him a letter saying, we didn't get your form, can you please fulfill it?
No,
you can find
civil
it on our-
disobedience.
Find it on our website at this page or whatever.
Okay, so if I elect to undertake civil disobedience, that's going to cost me $100 if I pay early.
You know, our first response is gonna be, can you please send in the form?
Yeah, no, okay.
Right? It's
So does that answer your question?
graduated enforcement. We're not gonna hit people over the head until they're not responding.
You must
Then
fill in
it's
a
a
return.
tool, we have to have a tool to say, look, if we don't have a tool to say, you've gotta give us the form, you've gotta respond, we need the information. And if we don't have some sort of a club, it's a carrot and stick approach. This whole thing is a carrot and stick approach. But you gotta have a stick. And $100 stick is not very big, but, it's a little, come on, give us your form, please. And the other part of it, don't forget the other aspect of this is the communication around why we're doing this, why we want you to step up to the plate if you have a secondary suite and get it inspected, because we're concerned about safety. And we're going to be encouraging people to come to us if they're worried about not being able to comply. There are sometimes more than one way to skin a cat. So we can provide suggestions and work with people on options for compliance. So we want to encourage those people to come in. That's the other aspect of it. So that's the carrot part.
Okay, well, let's not get off topic now. Much as I like debate around secondary suites, what we're debating now is the surcharge bylaw.
But he's asking how would this work?
Yeah.
So we need to explain all aspects of how it works.
Absolutely.
Need a second here?
Do need a second. Unless you care to amend your motion somehow to make it more likely to attract a second. Because normally...
No. I'd rather see death.
Fall on your sword.
Well, not yet, but I am gonna ask for you to say 20 seconds, if not, and we're done.
Well, I've seen a YouTube where the guy took 2 hours asking for a second, and eventually the guy said in Southern accent, "You know what ain't happening, right?"
If it's not in your heart, then, it's dead. And we'll redraw again.
Okay, I'll ask a final time, because I've asked twice already. Third and final time for a second. Okay, it's been seconded. Any further discussion? No? I will call the question. All those in favour of the motion, which just for clarity is adoption of the surcharge bylaw as is, that is exclusions on the fee for relatives, immediate family, firefighters, and a mandatory declaration. Is that a fair summary of what?
And it's also the amendments to the bylaw notice enforcement provisions.
Are we doing that all at the same time?
Well, the motion was for both bylaws.
Yeah, okay. So that's just the housekeeping needed to get the fees onto the bylaw. All in favour? That's 2. Opposed? That's 2. The motion passes. It was, no, the motion was changed. The motion did not attract a majority of votes, the motion fails. So, didn't want to scare anybody. Okay.
I'm looking at you.
Yeah. Okay, so that fails. I don't think we need an explanation of the vote. Do you want your vote recorded?
I'm indifferent as to one way or the other.
Yeah.
It is recorded.
Yeah, I want my vote recorded, obviously. Now, I'll just explain why. I mean, a lot of these things are necessary, but I don't want the fee in the first place. And so I debated long and hard. Do I support this, which is fine, if we had a fee? So I had to decide. What do I do?
So it's fee, no fee.
That was my vote. But that's not what this was about. But I can't be seen to be voting for any part of the fee, as you know.
Neither can I.
You voted for it.
I didn't vote for a fee. Or, sorry, I should clarify, to remove a fee.
Yes. It doesn't matter. The vote's done and the vote failed. So we'll move on. Now, in terms of a redo on this, I can reconsider debate on a revised recommendation. Is that right? Or does it have to be unanimous, the consent of council, to reconsider?
No, it could be mayor, or it can be a councillor who
2 councillors.
voted. No, voted in the affirmative.
Okay, so if you guys want to re-bring a new recommendation, you can. Or I'm amenable to bring it to table. As you know, I'm opposed to the fee. But certainly stimulate debate on it. We've got to get this thing nailed down. So now where do we stand now with the existing bylaw?
The existing bylaw is still
in force. It hasn't been repealed.
No.
Can I just draw your attention in the bylaw to the section which I believe will probably still be called secondary suite declaration. There's 3 questions stipulated there.
So are you talking about the current bylaw?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I believe probably they have a similar title.
To a page, sorry?
No, I don't know because I don't have the old bylaw here.
Oh, sorry, I thought you were drawing attention there.
Yeah, I think it's going to be called that. Okay, I think
the mayor may require the council to reconsider and vote again on a matter that was the subject of a vote, and a council member who voted in the majority with respect to a matter may move that the council reconsider and vote again on the matter, provided that the council shall not reconsider and vote again on the matter unless the motion is, for reconsideration is passed.
Okay, so there was no majority.
So the dispensation of the matter was, it failed. So the 2 who opposed, who were on the winning side of that vote, could call for reconsideration. One of them is you, the other one's Fred.
Okay, got it? Okay, so let's take that under advisement, but I think we've killed this one enough for now. Yeah, correct. That's that was exciting, if you like the sort of governance stuff. Okay, so now we're moving to correspondence. Ron, let's see if you can...
So, nothing on secondary suites. Bummer. Municipal workshop, this is a mobility pricing opportunity, no response, that's G1. G2, Sea to Sky Crime Stoppers, responded to by the mayor. No.
Did we put that on the website? Do you know it?
Yes.
Yeah, we did, thank you.
Thank you. G3, Squamish Receiving or OCP, thank you, no response. Emergency response.
Well, no, just before, that's a requirement, they have to send it to neighbouring communities. Anything that you saw there, Peter, that we needed to respond to?
No, I just looked through the provisions on natural hazards, which are interesting.
Was there anything on highway? Traffic, transit?
I didn't read that far.
Okay, I don't think there's a response required, but I wouldn't suggest that we gloss over it. So Peter, will leave that to your tender mercies.
Okay, so it's recorded as an NR, left with Peter. G4, emergency response trailers, which it says he came, he's gone to a different place, he's selling a different product.
I thought his initiative.
I like that, so I mean, this is nothing that council's gonna pursue, so it's an NR from my perspective unless staff picks up because they've got a dying desire to meet him again.
Well, if I could comment on that one, he has an interesting proposal, and I think I sent it around to everybody.
Mm-hmm.
But I think until we get an emergency planner, it would be premature.
Yeah, and we have budgeted 20 grand for one, so
that's a double NR then, so thank you. G5, mobility pricing again. This is an info one, less invitational, no response. G6, House Sound Committee Forum, council members already know, I'm attending, and I'm not sure if it's on the calendar, Sean, but if it's not, could you put it on, please?
You notice that date changed, eh? As well as the venue?
Yes.
Yeah, as well as the previous venue was more exciting. It was the top of the gondola.
Well, I'm a pass holder, so
I saw that.
Yeah,
there you go.
I thought it cool.
There we go.
Very quick. That's not as exciting.
Remember there too. There you go. So there we go. On the resident stuff, this is oversight to the presentation. Carl, thank you for. Actually, no, I did this with Louis already during the public session.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Thanked him, so that's responded at the table. R2, and this is what I did, email trail is attached and responded to by the mayor, and that is the same for the following two, so no response on the bottom three.
I concur with that, so no further matters arising there. Motion to receive correspondence, internal and external, thank you, and a second. Thanks, all in favour, opposed, that carries. And now, I'll ask for new business. There was none tabled. I'll entertain any, none. Public questions and comments.
I just wanted to ask a few questions regarding secondary suites. I'm kidding. That's supposed to.
Oh, that was a joke.
You guys smile. Come on.
I don't like joking about that kind of stuff.
Just an observation, when you were talking about all the concrete, the works yard where you reside, all these bridges that were taken away and cleaned up in the village of Lions Bay, that's where they are. They're buried in the works yard.
There you go.
Oh, that's useful
Prime
information.
example of previous
Well, I wonder how well they were
on
crushed.
site.
Oh, they were, if I could just respond to it, so actually the provincial government many years ago came around and they were snooping to see what we'd done, we shouldn't have done. And it had to do with that and a couple, and when it was pointed out that under their jurisdiction, under their contractors, et cetera, that they had buried all those bridges, so maybe they should just go away and quit looking at things in the village, and they did. Oh, that was 30 years ago.
30 years ago.
Over
So
30 years ago.
Zero settlement in 30 years. It was done right.
Yeah.
How can you tell with a metal building?
Well,
you're looking for
I
cracks?
really find that interesting.
You can look at the asphalt and the surrounding area.
I'm joking.
I'm
Okay,
not.
that's good.
I want to do it up there.
Yeah, that's good information. Well, you're not going to build a public works building on
No.
top of it, but that's yeah. On the non-crown land portion, right?
Yeah.
No, skyscraper.
Good views. Okay, thanks, Doug. That's good stuff. Anything else?
No, I did. you might need to get some out.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
I'm a little shell shocked on that one still, says. Okay, so we're going to move to closed council meeting now. I'll take a motion to close the meeting under 91A and 92L, please.
Thank you.
Thanks, thanks everybody. Thanks for coming. And just and a second. All in favour, opposed, carried. Let's do the close. Okay, returning from council meeting at 9 minutes past 11, having duly extended the meeting properly. Is it one item to report out? No, there's several items. So one, while I'm aware of it, is that that a strategic planning priorities poster as amended was approved and will now be published publicly. The second is that matters pertaining to the sale of Brunswick 52 Brunswick Beach Road were considered, including the terms of a bylaw delegating authority to the CAO to negotiate the sale, and the terms thereof, which we will now consider for 3 readings. So, having seen the bylaw, may I have a motion for first, second, and third reading, and a second. Any discussion on that? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favour? Opposed? That carries. So that's 3 readings on the delegation bylaw number 541 of 2018. And with that, we return to the main agenda. Those are the 2 reporting out items.
Did you want to mention the memorial?
Thank you. A third item, and that is that the membership of the Memorial Committee has changed slightly. Fred, if you just want to remind us.
Wendy Conway-Mayer has declined, and Ruth Simons has withdrawn.
Okay, fantastic. Thanks. So those a slight change in membership, which should be recorded in the minutes of the open meeting for public, whatever. It is 10 past 11. A motion to adjourn has been proposed, but luckily before it was seconded, the CEO had a bright idea, which is second on that one. All in favour? Opposed? That carries. Meeting adjourned at 11:11.